What would you do if every night at 3:03 a.m. someone walked by your house whistling, but you weren't allowed to look, or there was going to be really bad consequences? Because that's what this story is about. The poster has lived in this neighborhood since they were 6 years old, and they say that now being 13, they can see that there's only two weird things about this neighborhood. That's the whistler and the good luck. It's a super nice neighborhood. There's no crime. The weather seems to always be perfect, and everyone describes it as a million little blessings. When they first moved to this neighborhood, it was whenever her little sister was born and she was sick. She had issues breathing and nothing could really be done about it. And as soon as they moved there, all of a sudden she was miraculously perfect, like nothing ever happened, and it just wasn't explainable. But like they said, a million little blessings. When they moved into this neighborhood, they were also greeted by the welcoming committee, which came with macaroni salad, a gift basket, and the rules. The whistling would start at 3:03 and end precisely at 3:05. Said it would never harm them as long as you don't try to look outside. They said that anyone who tried to look would have the worst luck or worse. It was like a black cloud would come over them, and anything that could go wrong would go wrong. In a folder they give to you, it has the articles of freak accidents, car crashes, ruined lives, and they also said not everyone dies, but the life goes out of them. Because her dad is from the islands, he believes in things like this, and he actually took it very seriously, which is what the welcoming committee hopes that everyone will do, but some people don't. Her dad becomes a part of this welcoming committee because, just as they said, every single night on the dot 3:03, a whistler comes by. It starts light at the beginning of the street, and they could hear it fade out as it works its way down the street. Because of the really good luck, you can imagine that a lot of people don't want to leave, because as long as you don't look outside, you have all this amazing luck. But there are a few who do, and sometimes houses go up for sale and new people move in. So her dad is now a part of that committee to help welcome people. So some new neighbors move in, and the dad says that it goes very well. They believed everything they said, and there should be no issue. One night, those parents are going out, and they ask if their son can come over and spend the night with our poster's family. And of course, her parents say yes. The little boy is dropped off. He's 12 years old, very curious, and she can tell right off the bat this is not going to be good. So immediately he starts asking about the whistler and giving his assumptions on who in the neighborhood it could be. But she quickly shuts him down and is like, we don't talk about that. They end up playing games and eating popcorn and being kids. Pretty soon, they've stayed up really late like kids do, and it is nearing 3 a.m. So the little boy asks, have you ever tried looking? And she's like, absolutely not. We don't do that. We're not allowed to do that. And plus, our dad locks the blinds and hides the keys. But something that he quickly points out is that, well, your dad doesn't actually hide the key like mine does. I saw the key. It's laying on his dresser on his key ring. She doesn't believe him, and she goes down the hall to peek in her parents' room to check and see if the keys are actually laying there. Now, this whole time, her little sister is in the living room with the boy. As soon as she gets down the hall, she hears the whistler coming. Then she realizes, oh shit, my little sister. So she runs back to the living room, and her little sister and this bad little boy are facing the front window. The whistler's getting closer and closer. She can see the little boy fumbling with the damn lock. He does have the key, and he is unlocking the blinds. So she quickly rushes and grabs her sister, pulls her sister towards her, facing away from the window now, covers her eyes, closes her eyes, and just tells her, just don't look. The whistler is literally right outside of their house. She's calling the little boy's name, and he is not saying a word. Where she's standing holding her sister, she can still, with her eyes closed, reach the window. So she's reaching for the blinds to pull them shut, and she does pull them shut. And again, she says the little boy's name, and he turns and looks at her and just screams. Obviously, this triggers the parents to start running out of the room. They're wanting to know what the hell's going on. He was completely pale. He had literally bitten a line in his lip and it was bleeding. And the dad rushes out in a panic and asks, what happened? and they tell him he looked. All of a sudden, there's a knock at the door. Her mom is like, don't answer it. Don't answer it. Now there's constant beating on the windows, on the doors, front, back, just something wailing on this house. Then the mom whispers to the dad, call the police. And the knocking stopped. And then a polite tap, tap, tap. Police is at the front door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like the mom. It was repeating her words back to her. And it would say, police, call the police, tap, tap, tap. And then it kept saying, police, 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 police. So then the knocking gets super aggressive again. I mean, it sounds like a freaking sledgehammer, like someone's trying to break the door in. This happened the entire night until the sun came up. So the next day around lunchtime, her parents walk the little boy home and go inside and have to tell his parents what happened and what he did. And they said that by Thursday of that week, the little boy and his parents were packing into a moving truck and leaving. But the thing she noticed the most was how tired they looked. And she assumed that either it was just from the stress or the bad luck, or that maybe they opened the blinds too, so that their kid wasn't the only one that had seen it and he wasn't alone. There would be no more sleepovers at her house, and the dad now hides the key.
So one of my friends sent me this story that she came across online, and I had to share it with you. It is so creepy and gross. Ugh. Anyway, so this girl who is in her 30s shares her experience that she had with her hairstylist. Her hairstylist is in her 40s, and she's been going to her for about 9 months now. This is her 6th time seeing this stylist within that 9-month period. She says she usually goes in for a trim or a little bit of a style, but today she is going from long to an A-line bob. Since this cut is going to be such a dramatic length difference, the hairstylist took a before photo, intending to also take an after photo and then upload both on social media. So far, totally normal. Once the cut is finished, the stylist grabs the broom and sweeps her hair in the dustpan and sets the dustpan on the table for just a second. Then she grabs the dustpan and broom and proceeds to go to the back of the shop. She's gone for a few minutes, no big deal, and then she goes outside to smoke. And now this is where it gets weird. She had to go to the bathroom, and the bathroom is also in the back of the shop, so she decided while her stylist is out smoking a cigarette, she's gonna go ahead and use the restroom. She didn't see anything on the way to the bathroom, but on her way back, she peeks into the small side room, and she notices something. There is a clear plastic tote full of hair sitting on the table with no lid, and this girl's name is on it. She said, that was my hair in that tote. And then she takes a closer look and she notices that inside this tote isn't just today's hair. It looks like multiple trim sessions of her hair collected into this tote. Also inside of this tote was what looked like sand and bits and pieces of potpourri. She also found pictures of her previously cut hair mixed in with this physical hair. And then she looks over and there's the printer, and in the tray were today's photos of the cut hair that were removed from her, ready to go in the bin. Fully creeped out, she's looking around and she doesn't see any other containers like this anywhere else. So she takes out her phone and she takes pictures of the scene. And then, not knowing what else to do, she kind of just goes back out into the salon. So she sits back down in the seat, and when the stylist comes in, she mentions how she had gone to the bathroom. Doesn't this stylist start sweating bullets? You could tell that she was like internally freaking out, but she didn't say anything. She said she didn't really know what to say or do, and as a socially anxious introvert, this was her nightmare. So she just sat there, let the stylist finish, she paid, and she left. So she goes home and she's just stewing on this. And the longer she's thinking about it, the more creeped out and grossed out she got. So she decided she's going to text this lady. So she sends her a picture of the crime scene that she took earlier and asked for an explanation and said that she would appreciate it if she removed the box from her possession. I'm going to read you word for word what she wrote. Hey, so I saw this and I didn't know what to make of it. Can you help me understand what this is and why you have it? I'm not comfortable with you having this. Could you please discard the contents? Even though I love the cut, I think it's best if I find a new stylist. She says, they never responded. What in the witchcraft is going on here? Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments. This has got to be something like that, right? So freaking gross and creepy. And if you have a creepy story of your own, don't forget to submit it to the email in my bio.
This is a ghost story titled Something I Never Shared with My Family. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And this is one of them. The person who sent me this email did not specify if they want to remain anonymous or not, so just to be safe, I am going to keep them anonymous. The person who sent me this email opens it up by saying that she has experienced paranormal activity since she was a very small child, and she's at a point in her life where she regularly sees and hears spirits. It says, quote, "I know it sounds crazy, but this is something that has followed me for years." And for necessary context purposes, the woman who sent me this email says that she spent a lot of her childhood in a village town in Bulgaria with her grandparents. It specifically says that that home in the village was like her second home. This house was very old and had about 5 bedrooms in it. She says on the first floor of the home, her grandparents live right next to the entrance, and at the end of the hallway is her room. However, she says that in her bedroom in the village, there was a portrait of her late uncle who passed away when he was very young. She says that they never met, but she was always strangely drawn to him and his portrait. It specifically says that she used to stare at this portrait until she felt the room shift, always to something darker. She also says that she did not like playing in this bedroom because she just felt like there was someone watching her, and at night she felt like there was someone standing over her. And one night, after dinner, she goes to her room and says that she was super duper bored, so she was just staring at this portrait. When all of a sudden, she gets this overwhelming urge to knock on the wardrobe in the room. And she specifies that there was nothing special about this wardrobe. It was built into the wall, but it just held like a bunch of clothes, silverware, dishes, etc. So she walks up to it, knocks on it 3 times, and walks away. And the moment her head touches the pillow, something in the wardrobe knocks 3 times back. Obviously scared, she jumps up, runs out to the hallway, and tells nobody, but says that memory is etched in her mind so vividly, it's like she's there yesterday. She says that she didn't really think anything of it, and she kind of let it go, especially after they stopped visiting the village so often, until something happened in her bedroom that's located in the city. Now, this happened years later, but as she's trying to fall asleep in her bedroom, she just has this weird feeling that she is going to have a nightmare. And I don't know if it's a super common feeling to know when you were going to have a nightmare, but I was also one of those kids that knew when I was going to have a nightmare. Anyways, she ignores it and says out loud before she goes to bed, "It's fine, everything is going to be okay." But the dream she had was one of the scariest experiences that she's ever had. This dream takes place in the village home, in the room with her uncle's portrait. So that everything was black and white in this dream, and there was a light bulb hanging from the middle of the ceiling, swinging wildly, like out of an old horror film. And she just had locked eyes in on this portrait of her uncle, when all of a sudden, his eyes start pouring out this black paint. And she said she froze instantly and could feel her actual body tense up, like sleep paralysis. And then she felt it. She says there was a very dark presence standing behind her, with its fingers wrapped around her shoulder, which in my mind looks absolutely terrifying. Like, you can just barely feel their fingers wrapping around your shoulder where you can see them. Just as she's feeling these fingers wrap around her shoulder, there is a loud voice telling her to wake up. And on command, she woke up immediately, turned the lights on, and had them on the rest of the night. She says to this day that she still thinks of the portrait and wonders whether or not the presence that she feels is her uncle following her throughout life. Doesn't know if he was the one that was warning her in the dream or if he was the one standing behind her. But she's never told her family any of it. I honestly don't have anything to say about that story because it genuinely freaked me out. But if you have a scary ghost story, be sure to submit it to the email in my bio. But that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories. This is a terrifying story about a mimic. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about pretty scary stuff, and I actually have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And this is one of the submissions that I've received. So let's get into it. The person who sent me this story would like to remain anonymous, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to respect that. And if you don't know what a mimic spirit is, then let me tell you. Now, in my opinion, mimics are the scariest kinds of spirits that you can have around you because they can mimic people that you know and love. And a lot of the time, they like taunting the people that they're scaring, which in my experience has been very effective. I did get very scared. The woman who sent me this says that she was fresh out of high school, 18 years old, living with her grandparents, and the way that her room was set up was in the basement. So the basement was an open floor concept, which means there were minimal walls. And from the way that it's being described in the email, it sounds like all of the walls that were there were just curtains put up to mimic having a room. instead of having like this gigantic singular room for their granddaughter to sleep in. So it's important to note that this was an older 3-story house, and this occurred in the middle of the day. Additional important context is her great-grandmother was living with her grandparents at the time, but her great-grandmother and her grandparents would just stay upstairs because they couldn't get around all that well in the house. So the basement was kind of off limits anyways because their granddaughter lived downstairs, but they didn't really go down there to begin with because they can't get around all that well, just to set up the story. Now, the person who told me this says that it was around 10 a.m. when this happened. She had just gotten dressed and she was sitting on her bed. Her great-grandma was upstairs watching soap operas, and her grandmother was just upstairs also. So she gets up, gets ready to open the curtain. That is her main door. And clear as day, right as she's about to open this curtain, she hears her great-grandmother on the other side of the curtain say her name. And immediately, the person who sent me this email is taken aback and is like, how did my great-grandmother get downstairs so quickly, and why did I not hear anybody come down the stairs? So she's just standing frozen in fear, looking at this curtain and what could be on the other side of it, because she knows that her great-grandmother is not on the other side. And by the time she built up the courage to pull the curtain back, there was nothing there. So she runs upstairs and sees that her great-grandmother is still in the living room watching her soap operas. She then asks her great-grandmother, like, did you say my name? How did you get downstairs? Her great-grandmother proceeds to tell her that, no, I didn't go in the basement, and no, I didn't call your name because I thought you were still sleeping. So then the person who sent me this email is telling her great-grandmother, like, what had happened to her in the basement. And her great-grandmother proceeds to tell her that when she was a little girl, her mother told her that if you hear somebody's voice who has passed away, you will pass away in the same manner. But the person who sent me this email says that she didn't understand why the voice sounded like her grandmother until she learned about mimic spirits. And the more I read submissions, the more I realize that mimic experiences are actually very common for people. If you have a ghost story, be sure to submit it in the link in my bio. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories. Let's talk about something terrifying. So if you've seen a lot of my videos, and you know that this is very unusual for me to be filming from my bed. And before I get into my own personal experience that happened a couple nights ago, I just need to know if anyone else has experienced waking up in the middle of the night right before something weird happens. I don't know how else to explain it other than I woke up knowing that something was wrong or something was going to happen. And I was trying to calm myself down because I have terrible anxiety and I do not sleep very well, period. So I thought I was having a panic attack and tried to get myself to go back to sleep. I consistently have my TV running because I do not like silence. I do not like the dark. I like hearing noise because it makes me feel like I'm not by myself. Anyways, I'm trying to get myself to go back to sleep and I just cannot fall back asleep. I'm like wide awake at 3:40 in the morning. And I have these vinyl records like hanging up in my room. They've been there for around 2.5, 3 years. And I've never had this issue before. So as I'm easing myself back into sleep and like trying to convince myself that there's nothing wrong and I just like woke up for no reason, one of my vinyls falls off the wall. So I'm sitting there thinking like, that's really weird. Maybe it's all the fans going on in my room because I have like 3 fans during the summertime. And I'm still trying to get myself to go to sleep. Probably 15-20 minutes later, the freaking shelf that my vinyl was sitting on comes off the wall. Now, mind you, all of these little shelves are secured in the wall. Every single one of them has their own screws and anchors into the wall. And I don't know what it was. In that moment, I knew that I was awake for that reason. I don't know what it was. That's why I'm asking if people have had experiences like this that they just cannot explain. And this is also not the first time where I have woken up right before something weird happens or like something coincidental happens. And if you've been here a long time, then you know exactly what I'm about to say. I do not believe in coincidences like that. Take that as you will, but I do not believe in coincidences. But yeah, if anyone has experiences with stuff like that happening, please let me know, because I tried telling other people about it and a lot of people were like, that's really weird.
Let's read some creepy Disneyland and Disney World stories. In August of 2019, I saw something at the Disneyland Resort that rattled me to my core. It was just a subtle, creepy moment, but it's been stuck with me ever since. After Disney's D23 Expo in Anaheim, my sister and I headed to the theme parks for a late lunch. Since we had bags filled with merchandise from the expo, we rented a locker near the Disney California Adventure entrance. The parks were crowded that Saturday, and we saw several people wander out of the nearby restroom, wiping the sweat from their foreheads. The locker area was small, wonderfully cool, and thankfully uncrowded. It was just us and a young girl with fair skin that I noticed out of the corner of my eye. She crouched against the far wall, digging out of a bottom row locker. As my sister and I chit-chatted about our first ride, we kept our voices low as not to bother her. After a couple of minutes, I realized that the girl had been crouching for quite a while. Though I couldn't tell how old she was, I thought it was odd that she was alone for so long. I didn't want to look directly at her, so I kept track of her from the corner of my eye just to make sure that she was okay. The girl played with her long, yellow skirt as if dusting it off. I thought the pattern was out of place, either red polka dots or strawberries. It looked like something a person might wear on Dapper Day. Suddenly, the girl turned around. I stopped keeping track of her and focused on my sister, who was stuffing her things into our locker. Still, I could sense the girl's eyes on us. I looked again from the side, hardly able to see her in my peripheral vision. She was standing now, staring at us. I noticed her short, dirty blonde hair and the skirt's length as it cascaded to her ankles. She was taller and older than I expected, probably a young teenager. What was she doing? Why was she looking at us? It was just too weird, and I needed to know. I quickly crammed my bag into the corner locker and shut it. I could still see the girl watching us. All at once, I gave up my reservations and turned around. No one was there. The locker area was totally empty. There wasn't a thing that resembled a yellow dress or a girl with fair skin. For a moment, I stared at the emptiness with goosebumps racing down my arms. "Are we going over to Disneyland?" my sister asked. She looked toward me and noticed my flustered face. "What's wrong?" I said, "Did you see that girl near those lockers?" "Yeah, I saw someone," my sister muttered. She had noticed the girl too. But I didn't have to explain. My sister was already staring at the empty row of lockers near us. I watched the color swiftly leave her face. I told my sister about the ghost I'd seen at Disneyland before, and now she had seen one too. The moment was haunting and darkened the sunny afternoon. My sister reopened the locker and yanked our things from it. With our arms full, we rushed toward Disneyland, gripping our bags and unable to shake the ghostly girl from our minds. When you enter Disneyland, you walk under the train tracks. Just after this, on the left side of the street, next to the City Hall restrooms, is the firehouse. When Walt Disney was alive, he had an apartment on the second floor of this building. He used it as a home base of sorts while the park was being built and stayed there often after Disneyland opened. He also hosted celebrities and VIPs in his apartment. Whenever Walt was in the park, he would light a lamp in the fire station window to let people know he was there. Apparently, Walt never left. According to Disney legend, soon after Uncle Walt's death, a woman from the maintenance crew was cleaning the apartment and noticed that the lamp was still lit. She turned it off and left, only to see it lit in the window when she got outside. She then did what anyone would do in this situation. She went back into the apartment and turned the lamp back off. When she went back outside, the lamp had been relit. She went back again and turned it off, only this time she didn't leave the apartment. The lamp turned itself back on, right in front of her. Nobody has tried to turn the lamp off since. It is left burning to symbolize Walt Disney's presence in his beloved Disneyland. To this day, cast members report footsteps and knocking coming from the fire station apartment, especially at night. In 1996, a 19-year-old boy tried to sneak into Disneyland for grad night. Every June, Disneyland is open overnight for high school graduates. Thomas Cleveland snuck over a perimeter fence and onto the monorail track. A security guard saw him and tried to warn him to get down, as this was a very dangerous place to be. Poor Thomas didn't listen. He just ran away so he wouldn't get in trouble. He should have listened, because just then he was hit by a monorail train and dragged 30 to 40 feet before the train stopped. When I worked at Disneyland, I heard rumors that sometimes late at night, cast members driving the monorail would see a young man running along the monorail tracks at the back of the park, in the spot where Thomas died. 1 minute the figure was there, and the next he was gone. Dolly Young was riding on the Matterhorn on the Tomorrow side. There are 2 tracks that go through the ride, one near Tomorrowland and one near Fantasyland. Dolly was alone in the back seat and a child was alone in the front seat. In the middle of the ride, Dolly unbuckled herself, supposedly to assist the child in the seat in front of her. She stood up just before the dip where the track crosses over the track she was riding on. She hit her head on the bridge and fell onto the track. When the next sled came along, Dolly got run over. The story is that they had to dismantle the track to dislodge her body. Dolly now haunts the Matterhorn. Some people say they've seen Dolly. I worked on that ride for several years and I never saw her, but I sure did feel her. On July 8, 1974, 18-year-old Deborah Gale Stone, a new employee who had just graduated from Santa Ana High School, was crushed to death after slipping between a revolving wall and a stationary platform inside the America Sings attraction. She was in the wrong place during a ride intermission. It was unclear whether this was a result of inadequate training or a misstep, as the ride had opened about a week earlier. The attraction was closed for 2 days while crews cleaned up and installed new carpeting and installed warning lights and breakaway walls to prevent further incidents. When I was in middle school, my family was riding Pirates of the Caribbean in Disney World during the nighttime extra magic hours. It was during the fireworks, so there was almost no one in line. We had already walked onto the ride a couple of times and went back for another trip. This last time, there was no one in the couple of boats ahead of us or behind us, except for one guy in the boat directly before ours. We had heard the legend that if you yelled George 3 times during the fire scene, you might see him, and since no one else was around, we decided to give it a shot. We yelled, "George, George, George," as quickly as we could when it was time, had a giggle, and enjoyed the rest of the ride. Then noticed about the time we got to the jailhouse scene that the person who had been in the boat ahead of ours was gone. That was our George experience. Spooky. Okay, let's read some scary stories that were sent to us. But before we get into it, I had already recorded this damn video, and at the end of it, there was no sound. And during the video, I had the fireplace going on my TV, I had all the lights off. In the middle of the video, I heard a weird, scary sound. So I got up and turned all the lights on, and I turned Rhett and Link on. We need some good vibes. These 2 stories are scary, okay? They're just scary, okay? Let's get through this. This story takes place when I was around 8 or 9 years old. My house is very old and very haunted. It used to be a funeral home, a restaurant, and a home for many people before my family ever lived here. One night I woke up to my cat sitting at the edge of my bed, meowing in a way that I've never heard him meow before. It was almost like a hiss mixed with a growl. I opened my eyes to see a tall man that looked like a shadow bending towards me, standing at the end of my bed. I was frozen from fear and started shaking. I put the covers over my head and held it there for maybe 2 minutes, and when I peeked my head out to see if he was still there, he was. The shadow figure stood standing still, watching me for what felt like an eternity until I just forced myself asleep. The next night, the same thing happened. This time I picked up my screeching cat and yelled for my mom. When my mom came in, the thing slowly disappeared or faded away. Then on the 3rd night, it happened again. I was starting to wonder if this would happen every night and I'd have to just make peace with it. This time, when I woke up to my cat hissing at the figure, I started shaking. I then told it to leave. It didn't budge. So I got up and ran to my mom's room and jumped in her bed. My mom's room is right across the hallway from mine, so I can see my doorway from her bed, and the thing was still in my room and my cat was still hissing. My cat is not aggressive in any way and he's very shy, so I could tell that whatever that was not a good presence. My mom believes my story, but she also thinks that it was just sleep paralysis. That got me wondering if it was too, but if it was sleep paralysis, how did my cat see it too? Anyway, I want to know what other people think of this and if they have experienced something like this as well. Okay, so if you've experienced something like this, let us know in the comments. But if your animal thinks something is weird, then something is probably weird. When I was 12, I was living in Fort McMurray, Alberta. I was home alone one night and I was already pretty creeped out because I've heard and seen stuff before. It was around 10:45 at night when I got up from bed to go make some food. I was very scared to go downstairs. I lived in a 3-story house with a creepy-ass basement. Anyway, as I was going down the stairs, I thought I saw someone out of the corner of my eye. It looked like my little sister, but again, I was home alone for the weekend. I got freaked out but tried not to give it any attention. I got downstairs and my kitchen lights were on and my basement door was open, even though I had turned off all the lights and closed the door before I went upstairs hours beforehand. I was really scared but closed the basement door anyway. I walked into the kitchen and started cooking. About 45 minutes had passed when I heard something walking up my basement stairs. I thought my dad might have came home early from work. We had a door to the parking lot in the basement, so I didn't think anything of it. When the footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs, I was expecting my dad to walk in. When no one came through the door, about 10 minutes later, I called my dad and asked if he was home. He said no and that he was still an hour away at work. I freaked out and went running back up to my room and slammed my door, locking it. I could hear stuff in my living room moving around and thought someone might have broke in. I heard heavy boots walking up the stairs and go into the bathroom. Then they walked to my bedroom door and stopped. I was in my closet hiding. Then the closet door started shaking violently and I was quietly crying and trying to text my mom. About 20 minutes later, I came out of my closet and my room was completely trashed and there were big scratch marks on my door. I called my guy friends to come over and check out my house. They walked into my house and checked all the rooms. We found nothing or no one. We were all freaked the fuck out and sat on my couch downstairs. That's when we all heard someone upstairs walking around in all the rooms and the basement door flung open on its own. We freaked out some more and ran out my front door. I ended up staying with a friend that weekend until my parents were home. They came home to the place completely trashed and scratch marks up the walls. Safe to say, we moved out a couple weeks later. That one is obviously very scary, but was that paranormal or did somebody actually break in? And why is scary shit always happening in Canada, in Australia, and South Africa? That's the story I was reading, by the way, when I heard a creepy noise in my house and had to get up and turn all the lights on and turn on Rhett and Link. So I think I'm done reading scary stories for today. Let's read some scary Reddit stories. A few years ago, I was walking through the woods off the beaten track a bit and I smelt this really overpowering sweet smell. Being nosy, I pulled back the undergrowth to have a look and found an unalived body. The guy had clearly been there a while and wasn't looking great. He was all swollen and green and black with various runny bits. The local wildlife had also been dining well for a few days. I called the police, who told me to wait with the body until they arrived. Being in the middle of nowhere, it took a while for them to arrive and it got dark, and I was just sat there in the dark with him for a long time. It turned out he had unalived himself. For a long time afterwards, I had dreams about him and he would talk to me about not nice things. Mainly about how he was angry I had disturbed his resting place and he wanted me to unalive myself. Probably just my imagination, but all pretty disturbing at the time. He still turns up in my dreams from time to time and no doubt will be tonight after typing this. When we first moved into the house I grew up in, I used to hear things calling my name from the opposite end of the house. Like, I would be in my room playing with Legos or something and I would hear my dad call my name from his room. So I'd go to my parents' bedroom and ask them what they wanted, and they'd always tell me that they never called my name. Being a little kid, I honestly started to think that they were playing a joke on me because this happened about once every couple of days. Well, one night it happened and I went to ask them what they wanted like always. But right as I stepped into their room, I heard my mom's voice calling me from the living room, which is all the way on the other side of the house. It was at that exact point that I knew they weren't tricking me because I was looking at both of my parents sitting in front of me. I kind of kept this to myself until my brother was diagnosed with partial narcolepsy. One of the symptoms of narcolepsy is apparently hallucinations, so I thought maybe I had it too. Went and got myself checked, completely fine. So I have no idea what was calling my name all those years, and I still hear it at night whenever I come to visit. When I was a child, I lived in an old Victorian house, and I would always hear laughing while I was trying to sleep. I was an only child with a single mother, and when I was about 5 to 6, I would wake up hearing laughter in the hallway in the middle of the night. After mentioning this to my mom, she swore it was probably just the TV being left on late. One night, I awoke hearing the laughter in my room. I went to sit up but felt like there was someone holding my shoulders down, invisible hands gripping into my shoulders while I heard laughing. I screamed my little heart out. My mom ran into my room, flicking on the bedside lamp, convincing me it was just a dream, until I said, "But my shoulders hurt." She lifted up my t-shirt and there were 2 adult-sized handprints on my shoulders. I honestly thought I had imagined it and that it never happened, but the other day I mentioned it in passing to my mom and she went blank white and said, "I don't want to remember that." A couple of friends and I were at the annual fair held at the local park one year. Being 14-year-old girls, we thought we would be cool and separate from the large crowd at the fair by walking along a rather long walking trail that starts at the fairgrounds and travels on for a few miles. Well, it was late in the evening and the lighting was bad. We were sitting at the mouth of a tunnel, which sat at the top of a secluded hill, when a lady with a baby approached us. She asked if we knew a man who was standing at the bottom of the hill near a bench looking in our direction. We told her we didn't, and her response was, "Well, he's been following you for a while. I don't know what he's up to, but you should be careful." Needless to say, we hightailed it back to the fair. When I was about 10 or 11, I was ill and did not go to school one day. My parents both worked and couldn't get the day off, so they told me to just stay in the house and don't answer the door to anyone. I was sitting watching TV in the front room that has a big bay window that looks out onto the street, which is a main road with a row of shops across the road. I felt awkward with all the people walking past, so I decided to shut the curtains slightly, and for some reason, as I did, I noticed this man in his late 40s, early 50s, with a beard and glasses, wearing a green knitted jumper. Something about him walking past just seemed strange, but not enough to play on my mind until he walked past again 10 minutes later in the same direction, as if he had just looped around the block. 10 minutes later, he appeared again and stopped at the edge of the driveway for about 30 seconds looking at the window. He then proceeded to the door looking in the window as he walked by. He knocked on the door a few times, but something told me not to answer. He then came to the window, banging on it and saying something, but I couldn't make it out. I then noticed the realization on his face that there was a back door. My parents never locked the back door, so the dog could come in and out as he pleased. I ran through the kitchen, and within seconds of locking the door, the handle started turning and he started banging on the door. I curled up in a ball on the floor in fear, and he started trying to open windows and eventually left about 30 minutes later. I dread to think what could have happened if I had not remembered the back door was unlocked. And that is why I hate being home alone. Let's read another scary story that was sent to us. This happened in Austria and my mom was 21. It was in 1992 when my mother worked as a nanny in a large castle. The family had 3 girls and a boy. Right from the first day, she noticed something unsettling. There were strange and unreadable prayers hanging on the walls throughout the castle. My mother said she couldn't decipher them. The children also appeared pale and unusually quiet for their age. Then, strange things began to happen. One day, my mother had a severe headache and asked her boss for headache medicine. Shortly after taking it, she felt dizzy and had to lie down. And later, she felt weak and disoriented. Everything in the castle seemed even scarier after that. She was often alone with the children in this enormous building. The mother of the family warned her to never enter the first floor where the chapel was. During a walk around the home, my mother wanted to open the door to where the chapel was. When she touched the handle, the door swung open by itself and slammed shut immediately. Startled, she ran back to the playroom with the children and did not try to go in there again. My mom's cousin started working in the castle shortly after my mom quit. She was 14. One day, she suddenly didn't return home. In Austria, at 14, you can decide where you live, so CPS or the police couldn't do anything. The castle family had manipulated her and kept her under their control. During this time, my mother also noticed that around her aunt's house, there were strange, evil symbols carved into the trees. So this person's mom and the aunt decided to do a ritual to try to get rid of any evil. The ritual lasted 3 days, and apparently the house smelled really bad during those entire 3 days of the ritual. It was coming from the attic and it smelled like something had died up there. And other weird things happened, like really loud noises coming from the attic. And after the ritual was complete, the cousin did return home. But till this day, the cousin doesn't really speak about what happened during her time working in the castle. And the owners of the castle moved because the dad was doing illegal stuff. He was selling substances. And now the castle is owned by the village, but this person did send me a picture of the castle. And the castle is called Schloss Wassen. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I'll spell it correctly for y'all. Anyway, here's the picture. And some of y'all might be thinking that the mom was not very smart for going and opening that door that the mother told her not to open, But let's be real, at 21, I would have opened that door too. Even now, at 32, I would open that door if someone told me not to open it. I would. But to me, because the children were like pale and quiet, and there was like a chapel and rituals and weird smells and evil carvings, to me, it sounds like vampires. That sounds like vampires to me. That's very much giving American Horror Story Hotel. I think it's vampires. What do y'all think?
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. If you're someone that goes to groove each and every weekend at one spot, you should look into that, because I'm going to tell you guys a story time of my cousin who did exactly that, and we found out that he was being used as a pawn. Growing up, I had this cousin who was way older than me, boy cousin by the way, and you know, he loved grooving like nobody's business. Each and every weekend he was drinking and outside. So this boy cousin of mine used to groove at one place and one place only, and his friends would make mention that, you know, we would literally go to a different spot, but at a certain time he'll tell you guys, hey, let's go and groove at that place. Like, he could not go a weekend without finding himself at that place. Cousin eventually gave himself to alcohol. He even left his job so that he can pursue going to this particular place every single day. Now it's no longer a weekend thing, it's an everyday thing. One thing about my cousin, he had graduated, I think he had a degree in business management or something, but my cousin was good when it came to handling business, and he was also very good in numbers and money specifically, right? So my cousin had a well-paying job, because one thing about this guy, he knew everything and anything about business. Like, he was good like that. One day, man decided to quit his job to go and work at this particular groove place that he loved going to, and he literally worked there as a cashier, and he was making way less than he used to make. So one day he came back home and he had bruise marks or whatever, and he told his mom that he got beaten up at his job because someone accused him of stealing, and the owner of the place believed them without even hearing his side of the story, and they beat him up. So his mom was angry or whatever and wanted to go to the place where he was working to speak to them. And what's crazy is, after they beat him up, they still expected him to show up to work or whatever, and she wanted to go to the workplace and tell them that, hey, my son is not coming back here, blah blah blah. But my uncle advised my aunt, obviously my cousin's mom, like, no man, let's just go and consult and see what's happening. They got there, and obviously the person told them that, hey, there's a price on your head. The owner, wants to kill you. One thing you should know about these places that you guys groove at is that these people use you that attend groove for rituals. It's not like the snake stories where they actually kill you so that they can make money. No, they basically do rituals on the alcohol that they sell you guys, and they also do rituals at the place. You know, maybe you're someone that doesn't come inside the actual place and you groove outside. They will sprinkle whatever they sprinkle on the streets as well as inside the place, so that you keep coming back all the time. Think about it. You as an individual, each and every weekend, you always want to groove, but you always want to groove at one specific place. And that's exactly how they gain their power. That's exactly why you find some places of groove are always full. It's because they do things like that. That way, they keep you guys coming back and you don't even realize it. You just think, oh my goodness, I love this place. It's always fun at this place. And they did something to you. That's exactly what they did to my cousin, you know. And my cousin now is starting to recall, and he's like, yeah, because when he entered the place where they went to, they first, the person that was helping them saw that, you know, something is up here, you know. So they first steamed him. I don't know, you know, when they light the thing and then smoke comes out. What is that called, Ghana? I forgot, but yeah, that's what they did to him, not steaming. So he was like, yeah, the first time he went to that place, the owner of the place came to them and spoke to them and whatever, and gave them free booze he gave them complimentary booze or whatever. And he's like, from that day on, he wanted to basically always find himself there. And he's like, it just kept on getting worse and worse and worse. And he's like, yeah, you know, when someone wants to steal your blessings, they will steal your blessings where God has gifted you. If you're someone that's smart, they will steal your brain and make you a crazy person, and they'll take your luck. If you're someone that's good with your hands, they will steal your blessings on your hand, and you will find yourself just going astray, not knowing why. So because he's good in business, the owner of that place needed his blessings because he's so good in business, and if he can just take his blessings, he was going to be able to grow his place even more. That's why they eventually, did witchcraft on him directly and made him leave his job so that he can come work there. Because it does not make sense for you to leave a job that's paying, I'm making an example by the way, for you to leave a job that's paying 20,000 rand for a job that's going to give you 4k. It just does not make any sense. But my cousin did exactly that, and he says when he did it, it actually made sense to him. What? So the person that was helping them also told them that this person wanted to kill you, basically. He started by beating you up, and he realized that he needs evidence, basically, or stack a file of things that you did, so that when he actually does something to you or you go missing or whatever, he's going to be like, yo, that boy, I took him in and then he was stealing, he did this. We think he was doing substances. You know what substances are. We think that he was doing substances. Maybe he went astray and somebody unalived him somewhere. And so people would obviously think that, they would never know that the owner of that place did him, and you guys were just going to think it's just random people, and you guys will never know what happened to him. And so obviously they left and they gave him stuff to bath with, you know the drill. Fortunately for him, he went back to his workplace and he told them that he wants his job back. And because he's so good in what he does, his boss didn't even hesitate to bring him back, and they had not found a replacement for him. So he went back to work, y'all, and nothing happened to the owner, by the way. The place is still going on, obviously, because they do these rituals on you people, and you guys are still gonna go back. And one thing you should know about witches or people that deal with rituals and stuff like that, they strengthen themselves, so that, for example, if someone is a witch, they will strengthen themselves so that whatever, even if you guys catch them in the act and throw whatever that they were sending to you, maybe they wanted you to get into an accident, so that when you throw it back to them, whatever curse that they put on your name, nothing's gonna happen to them. So yeah, nothing happened to him, and my cousin doesn't groove anymore as much as he used to. He doesn't really drink as much as he used to. He's in a better place now. Not in heaven, but you get what I mean.
Spooky story time. A follower named Rudy sent me this story, and he says that in 2013 his dad had passed away, and then a year after that, in 2014, one of his best friends was unfortunately unalived. Obviously a lot of stuff was going on all at once. He was not taking it well. So one day he was in his room having a few drinks, and there had been a pile of clothes sitting on his computer chair for weeks. No one had touched anything. He hadn't messed with anything in that area. So he's there. Obviously he's sad. He is feeling all the emotions, and out of nowhere, all of the clothes that was sitting on that computer chair literally just gets thrown off. He says that immediately he didn't feel anything. He didn't want to think negative because it could have been anything. Maybe he just happened to walk by that area without him noticing. Maybe he brushed that chair. He didn't notice it, and that's what happened. He said that that is what was weird though, because soon after that, things started to kind of amp up. He says that he had a bedside table right by his bed, and again he was feeling all the emotions. So he had a few cans of drink and a few Gatorade bottles. He hadn't messed with that stuff again in a few days, and he is laying down just thinking. He had the TV on, and out of nowhere, the Gatorade bottle that was sitting on that bedside table just flies off that table. He sits up. The table was a little bit away from the bed, so he couldn't have kicked the table or anything like that, and he's just looking at the table like what happened? He did say that there was one specific incident that really made him stop in his tracks. He says that him and his now wife were having a little heated discussion, a little argument. They were not agreeing on whatever the topic was. They were shouting. They were just not happy. And he said that there was a stack of papers on his desk, and in the middle of their argument, the stack of papers is literally like thrown into the air. The papers are in the air and they're like, you know what I mean? All the way down to the floor. And him and his wife are looking at all of these papers like, he always tried to make an excuse for everything, but there was kind of no way to excuse this. They ended up selling the house. He now lives in a new house and he doesn't feel any type of anything, no energy, no nothing, but he doesn't know what any of this could have been in his previous house. His dad did pass away in that house, so he doesn't know, like, is he imagining things? Could this have been his friend that had passed away as well? Could it have been his dad that had passed away in the house? He doesn't know, but he says that he's always been a believer in the supernatural, in spirits and everything, but because of these incidents that happened at his previous home, he definitely doesn't doubt that there is something else in this world. Thank you so much to Rudy for sharing this story. As always, if you guys have a story that you'd like to share, please send it via DM or email because I'd love to read it, and I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
This girl sent me a story saying that something was pretending to be her father after he passed away. Now, I can't say the name of what this is called, but you guys can put 2 and 2 together. Dahlia is 19 now, and her father passed away when she was 15 years old, and they were extremely close. They were like best friends. Went to the hospital for stomach pains, and he ended up passing of a heart attack. And what was terrible is that he wasn't hooked up to a heart monitor, so when he passed away, the doctors and nurses did not know that he passed away until the next morning. Well, the same night that her father passed away, she was at home in her bed, and she wanted to call him because she missed him. This was before she knew that he had passed away. Well, as soon as this happened, the presence in her room just shifts and she feels something next to her bed, right next to her bed where her father used to read her stories when she was little. She suddenly hears something say, "It's going to be okay." Well, a few days after he passes away, a bunch of weird stuff starts happening. Her mom and her start finding things in places that they weren't before. His phone was shut off, but sometimes it would just randomly turn on and play his favorite song. They suddenly started seeing heart-shaped things everywhere, heart-shaped crumbs, heart-shaped spills, heart-shaped patterns. Things kept happening like this for a while, and she started to enjoy it because she started to feel like he was kind of telling her that he loved her. Like this was his way of telling her, like, I love you, I'm okay. Nothing crazy happens until 3 years later when she was living at her grandmother's house. Her and her grandmother are both religious. They're Christians. They both believe in ghosts. Her whole entire family does. In fact, her whole entire family has seen past loved ones before. So they know about this stuff. They're very intuitive. And she said that weird things would especially happen in that house. So one night she's at her grandmother's house and she's on the phone with somebody that she has a crush on, right? And she has a TV playing in her background. When randomly at 11:03 p.m., the TV just shuts off and the call that she's on just disconnects, hangs up. Suddenly, the lights go off in her room and a battery operated lamp that she had just shuts off. And right when the lamp shuts off, she starts hearing these loud church bells, and I'm talking like they're so loud she's having to cover her ears, and they don't live near a church. The noise flooded the house and it only lasted for about 3 seconds, and then after that it just stopped. She's just sitting there in like shock when she sees something out of the corner of her eye, and she looks over at her bedroom door, and there's a very tall shadow man standing in her bedroom door. It had no face, but even though it had no face, she knew it was looking directly at her. She only saw it for a split second, then she blinks and then it's just gone. The reason she mentioned the time earlier being 11:03 is because on 11:03 is November 3rd, and that is the day that her father passed. Now, she's pretty freaked out about this, so she calls the guy back that she was talking to, and she's like, "Hey, listen, did you hear anything?" And he's like, "No, the call just failed." At this point, she's freaking out because she's like, what was that? Why did everything shut off? Am I imagining that? Did I imagine that shadow man? So she goes downstairs to check on her grandmother, and her grandmother is watching TV, and her grandmother seems visibly freaked out. So she asks her grandmother what's wrong, and her grandmother's like, "Didn't you hear those church bells?" Now, this kind of stunned her because she didn't think that she had heard them too. So her grandmother was like, "Was it from the TV upstairs?" And Dahlia is like, "No, my TV shut off." And her grandmother's face just goes pale. pale. So she goes, yeah, mine did too. That's what her grandmother said. And then she was like, did you see the shadow man? And her grandmother's like, no, I've never seen a shadow man in my house before. So she figures at this point that she just imagined it, but she goes to sleep with literal bells ringing in her head. A few months later, she's still living in that house and the same thing happens again. The TV shuts off, the lights shut off, and then the bells go off again. Now she's pretty annoyed at this point because she had a test in the morning for school and she needed as much sleep as possible. So she starts to go downstairs to see if her grandmother had heard anything when she stops because in the spare bedroom, she sees something. She just froze. She did not know what to do. She felt like she couldn't even move, even though she was standing there wide awake. But here's where it gets scary. She could see him a little better now. She could vaguely see the man, but this time she could see his face, and it looked like her father. But she knew it wasn't her father. It was something trying to look like her father. She said at this point he doesn't see her, and he starts slowly walking around the room. He's looking at pictures. He's looking at things in the room. He's like analyzing things. Almost like if he was trying to remember the room. And then as soon as he sees that she's looking at him, he just stops. At this point, she feels like the air in her lungs had left her. She could not breathe. But then something super creepy happens. She can tell that he's whispering underneath his breath, but she can't tell what he's saying, almost like he's speaking in a different language. Once she could finally move again, she damn near collapsed, trying to catch her breath. And then she looked up and he was just gone. Now, she doesn't know if this had anything to do with her dad or not. She doesn't think this was her father. She doesn't think that her father would do something like this to her. So she runs downstairs to tell her grandmother, and her grandmother's like, yes, I heard the bells too. And she's like, did you see the man? And she's like, no, I have never seen a man in this house, especially not one that looked like your father. So she makes her say a strong prayer with her to banish the unclean spirits that were in her home. They wanted those spirits to know that they were not welcome, and she never saw that shadow man again. Here's the kicker. She asked her grandmother what she thinks that this could be, and surprise, surprise, when her mother was younger, she used a Ouija board in that exact bedroom, and her grandmother did not know until years later. Here's the even crazier part. Her mother used to have sleep paralysis all the time, and guess what she would see? A man that looked like her father who had passed. She said, so what is this? Because whatever this is, what is it? Taking the shape of past loved ones of my family? But all she knows is that that wasn't her dad. What do you guys think this is? I think I know what it is, and I think you know what it is. I just can't say the word. I just found out that I just can't say that word. So happy about that. But we all know what this is, right? And I think that it definitely stemmed from the Ouija board 100%. I do not think that was your father. I don't think it had anything to do with your father. In fact, I think that it took the pain that you were feeling from the loss of your father, and it was using that to try and scare you. It was doing the same thing that it did to your mom, maybe because you are your mom's daughter. That is my thoughts on it. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on it, but that's what I think it was. Definitely stemmed from the Ouija board and all of that, and that's my thoughts. But drop all your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions in the comments, please. And as always, please be respectful. This is exactly why you do not go into the woods in Appalachia by yourself. So this girl's name is Kay. She lives in Florida now. She's 22 years old, but when she was 16 years old, she took a trip with her friends to the Appalachian Mountains. Now, we're going to call her friends Megan and Alexa. Now, Megan's grandmother lived in the Appalachian Mountains. They didn't really know what to expect going there, but they figured her grandmother lived there. They assumed the best. So they get to her grandmother's house, they unpack their stuff, and they go to their designated rooms. Now, Megan's grandmother owned 4 horses. Their names were Izzy, Holland, Nay, and Atlantis. So after they relaxed for a little while, they decide that they want to go horseback riding. They were out there for about an hour and a half until they got hungry and went home for dinner. So the sun at this point is just setting and it's very quiet. So they eat dinner. Everything is fine that night. The next day around 9 a.m., Megan's grandmother goes and visits a sick friend, and she's not going to be back until the next morning. So after they eat breakfast and hang out for a little bit, they decide again that they're going to go horseback riding. It's about 1 p.m. at this point, and they go out to the stable to get the horses ready when they have a huge problem. Nay is missing. So they go out and they're calling his name. They're trying to lure him in with his favorite carrot treats, and to no avail. So they decide that they're going to have to go looking for him by themselves. But when I say by themselves, they're going to split up. So essentially, they're going into the woods by themselves. So Kay goes in her direction and Megan and Alexa go in their directions. Well, Kay is good for about an hour. She's looking for Nay. She can't find him when she runs into something terrifying. Torn and tattered with scratch marks all over it, she finds Nay's collar. Now, she immediately assumes the worst and she goes to call Megan and Alexa, and as soon as she tries to call them, the call doesn't go through. Well, right at that very second when the call doesn't go through, her phone rings. She looks down at it and it's no caller ID. And for a second, she's like, okay, this has got to be spam. I'm not picking up. But something inside of her tells her to pick up that phone. As soon as she picks up the phone, Soon as she picks up the phone, dead silence. You could hear a pin drop. So she goes to hang up the phone when suddenly she hears something that makes her want to vomit. This deep, raspy voice echoed through the speaker. It sounded inhuman and the speech was slurred. I can see you. Don't run, don't hide. She is frozen in shock at this point. And then the next thing she knows, lights out. She's waking up and Megan and Alexa are shaking her awake. She had fainted. Now it's around 7 p.m. at this point and they want to get back to the house. So they start walking back to the house, but they can't see anything on the path that they're on. So as they're trying to find their way back to the house, they hear that same voice again, except for this time it says, I can see all of you. They bolt into the woods, scared out of their minds, and they finally reach the house. And as soon as they get to the house, who do they see? Nay, eating grass with his buddies. Totally fine. Now, they're obviously stunned and relieved, but they're horrified because Nay's collar is on him, completely intact. Nothing is wrong with it. So immediately they call Megan's grandmother. Megan's grandmother picks up and she says, listen, I'll be back in the morning. So she comes back in the morning and she's like, what you guys did was super dangerous. She thought it was what you guys think it probably is. That was trying to lure them into the woods. I just can't say it. So that was her question. She wants to know what you guys think it was. Do you guys think that it was that, or do you think that it was something else? My first thought when I was reading the story was like, this is a human. And during that time period, I wonder where that horse was, because I feel like that horse is really lucky to be here today. But what do you guys think it was? And like the phone call, I've never heard of that happening, of like someone getting a phone call from something like that ever. This is the first story that I've ever heard where like a phone call was involved when it had to do with something like what we're talking about. So yeah, if you guys think it was that, or do you guys think it was something else, drop all your opinions, suggestions, and comments in the comment section. Just make sure to please be respectful as always. Thank you.
Have you ever come across or met somebody in your day-to-day life that just seemed really off? I've heard stories where people say that they think they've met a vampire or aliens in disguise. I got a really weird one for you. So this man named Matthew says that he'd been working at a liquor store for several years. He's seen a lot of people come and go, but this one stands out. This person comes into the store. He was a middle-aged white guy. He had brown hair and brown eyes. He was wearing khaki pants and a basic white button-up, and he walked up to the counter. So Matthew goes through his usual routine and asks what he can get for him. This guy looks Matthew dead in the eye with uncomfortable amounts of eye contact and says, Marlboros, lights, 100s, in a square box. He said it just like that, with pauses between each word. He also mentioned that he had perfect Midwestern English, so he didn't seem like a foreigner. Matthew kind of thought to himself, what the heck? Cigarettes don't even come in a square box, but whatever. He grabs the box of cigarettes, puts them on the counter, and then repeats back the order. Marlboro Light 100s box, your total is blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this guy reaches into his pocket, takes out his wallet, and hands the entire wallet to Matthew. Matthew's like, what the F is up with this guy? But he said at that point there was a line and he wanted the transaction to just be over with. So he took the wallet and he opened it up. He said inside were only two things. A brand new ID issued to that state, which he sees a lot of IDs. He checks them constantly. And he said this thing was like printed that day new. No fine little scratches like most of the IDs he sees. And then the other item was a brand new credit card with the sticker still on it. So he takes the card out and he runs it and he hands him his things back and he tells him to have a nice day, expecting him to leave. But this guy doesn't leave. He kind of backs up and he goes to like the side and he stands there and just stares at Matthew, watching him do his transactions and go through the entire line. He said he probably stood there for like over 5 minutes watching him. He said it didn't feel intrusive. He really hung back, but still, what the hell? He said he was watching intently, very much concentrating on what Matthew was doing. And once the line cleared, he just turned around and left without a word. He said he immediately calls his girlfriend just to tell her about it, and they were making fun of the whole square box thing. But then, 20 minutes later, this guy comes back, and he walked up and he said, I need a box of Marlboro 100 lights in a box. Almost as though he rehearsed it to really fine-tune the delivery of the request. He also says that he takes out his wallet and opens it up on his own, takes the card out, and directly hands it to Matthew. Matthew runs the card, gives him his things, says have a nice day, etc., and he leaves. and he never saw this guy again. He said it's been years and he still cannot get that day out of his head. Like, what the heck? What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts. Is he just a weirdo, or could he be some undercover otherworldly being learning how to be a person? Freaking weird. Anyway, don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
Now, this woman says that one night she was scrolling in her bed through TikTok, through Facebook, and she kept hearing heavy breathing. Now, when she was hearing heavy breathing, she said that she stopped breathing altogether. Now, mind you, she lives alone. She said that she stopped breathing altogether because she wanted to figure out where that noise was coming from. When she stopped breathing, she listened, and it sounded like somebody was laying right next to her, breathing in her ear. Fast forward, she says she doesn't feel comfortable. She's scared out of her mind. Her friend lives in the same apartment complex as her. She reaches out to her friend, tells her friend, like, hey, can I crash on your couch? Her friend said, okay. She gets to her friend's house. She sleeps like a baby. But later on, she eventually has to come back home, right? She said that when she gets home, it seems like things are missing. Like, there are certain things that she's looking for and she just can't seem to find them. So fast forward, she's really close to her niece and her nephew. She is so close to them that they come over on certain days. They even have a little room at her house. She said that they never had a problem going to the room that she set up for them at her apartment. But she said for some reason, they refused to go into that room. The nephew told her that there is a person in there, and he tries to hurt them whenever they fall asleep. Now, she says that she does not believe in the paranormal, that this situation has made a believer out of her. Now, fast forward again, she said that because the kids didn't want to go in the room, she set up pallets for them in the living room and left her door open, of course. She said that she's sitting on her bed and she's hearing that heavy breathing again. Now, when she's hearing the heavy breathing, this time she decides to follow where it's coming from. Now, she's following the heavy breathing, and she said it's almost like it's picking up the pace of the breathing, like it's panting now. And she's following it, and as soon as she hits the door, she says the door slams, and behind the door is this really dark figure. And as soon as she saw the dark figure, she's staring into his eyes, and she says she saw nothing but fire. Fire? Fire? Now, she said when she looked in his eyes and she did see fire, she said she was stiff. There was nothing that she could do. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. She said after she saw the fire in his eyes, she dropped to her knees. And it's not that she wanted to. It's because he was making her. So she said she woke up in the bed. She pretty much thought, okay, that was a nightmare, because she couldn't even fathom that was real. So she chalked it up as it was a nightmare. It was time for her to take her niece and her nephew back home. And as soon as she got to her sister's house to drop her niece and her nephew off, her nephew wanted to show like some kind of cool new toy that he had. But she said that something weird happened. As soon as her and her nephew were about to walk up the stairs, she saw something really dark run up the stairs and into her nephew's bedroom. Like it was trying to beat them to the room. Fast forward, she gets to her nephew's bedroom. She pretty much rushes up there too, because she wants to know what was that. So she rushes to her nephew's bedroom. And as soon as she rushes up there, she starts like looking around his room. She said that he has a fairly large room for a 6-year-old. So she's looking through the room, goes to his closet. And when she goes into his closet, it's like some little secret entryway in the closet. She calls her sister upstairs and she said, hey, did you know that this was like back there? She said, no, I didn't know that. I want to know why y'all don't be checking stuff like that. It could be a whole nother person living up on y'all house and y'all don't know it's a secret entryway. Please, like, anyway, she said that her and her sister went through her nephew's secret entryway, and when they went in there, there was nothing in there. It was completely empty. But she said that she felt sick to her stomach and pretty much had it in her head that she should have never gone in there in the first place. I'm with you. I agree. You shouldn't have went in there. Anyway, she then says that ever since she went into this little secret entryway, and she went home, she said that now things are worse. It's almost like there's more than one of these things that she's been seeing around her apartment.
What do you think would happen if your wife was missing and then you Googled best way to dispose of a body, follow it up with, can the FBI tell when you've accessed your phone? Right. Grown man, by the way, whose brain is supposed to be fully developed. The trial is currently ongoing. Everything that I'm saying in this video is alleged, and I guess Brian Walsh is innocent until proven guilty. On December 31st of 2022, Anna Walsh, a regional manager who worked for a real estate company as well as a mother of 3, hosted a New Year's Eve dinner with her husband, Brian Walsh, at their house in Cohasset, Massachusetts. The following day, she disappeared and was never seen again. By friends, Anna has been described as kind, inspiring, compassionate, loving, and respectful. By co-workers, she's been described as caring and supportive and as, quote, everything you would want in a colleague, direct supervisor, and a friend, end quote. But let's go back for a second to give you some context. It was 2008 when Anna first laid eyes on Brian Walsh when she was working at her job at a hotel. And for her, it was love at first sight. They started talking, had a lot of things in common, started dating. Fast forward to 2015, Brian proposes to Anna and they get married shortly after. In 2016, they had their first baby boy. 2019, they had their second. And in 2020, they had their third. All boys. At the time of this case, Anna was working for Tishman Speyer and she was traveling back and forth from her house with Brian in Cohasset, Massachusetts to a townhouse that she also owned in Washington, D.C., where her job was located, so she would commute there throughout the week. And if you looked at Anna and Brian's marriage and just Anna's life from her social media, you would think that they had the perfect little life, white picket fence, the whole thing. However, that was not exactly the case. According to Anna's close friends and family, there was tension in the marriage and a lot of it came from what Brian was dealing with. In December of 2022, shortly before her disappearance, Anna had been thinking about divorce. She was the main breadwinner for the household, and because her office was in DC, she wanted to move her family there because it just made the most sense. But she couldn't because her husband Brian was stuck in Massachusetts at their house on house arrest awaiting sentencing after pleading guilty to an elaborate art fraud scheme. He was known as a big-time art dealer, I guess you could say, and he was accused of selling fake paintings. Brian was claiming the paintings were real, and he was working with a buyer who paid $80,000 for a painting that turned out to be fake. It turns out that he had forgeries made, like copies, fake versions, and then sold those for a lot of money, claiming and lying and saying that they were the originals. And his whole scheme and web of lies reportedly involved multiple transactions across US states but also internationally. In 2021, in federal court, he pled guilty to charges including wire fraud, interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud, possession of converted goods, and unlawful monetary transactions. So he was waiting to be sentenced for that, and there was a possibility that he was facing up to 50 years in prison. On top of that, he had additional charges against him because he pretty much stole money from his father after his father passed away and left Brian out of the will. Needless to say, he was in deep legal trouble, and that of course affected their marriage, their children, and their family massively. Brian is also known to be aggressive and have a bad temper. Actually, in 2014, when Brian and Anna were dating, not married yet, Anna went to the police to report that Brian had threatened to kill her and her friends. However, nothing really came from that, and the case was dropped after Anna declined to cooperate with the police. So like I said, Brian and Anna spent New Year's Eve, December 31st of 2022 at a dinner party they hosted at their house. But by January 1st of 2023, the very next day, her friends and family members began having a really hard time getting in contact with her. She wouldn't answer to anyone. No one could get a hold of her. A few days later, on January 4th, Anna Walsh was officially reported missing separately by both her employer, Tishman Speyer, and her husband, Brian Walsh. Her work reported her missing because she had failed to show up to work for the last 3 days, which was extremely out of character for her, and her employer was the one who officially reported her disappearance first. Even though Brian called to report it the same day, her employer filled out the initial missing persons report. But that aside, obviously Anna lived with Brian and they had 3 young kids together, and yet even though Brian claimed that he hadn't seen her or spoken to her since January 1st, for some reason he waited until the 4th to report it to authorities. The story that Brian told police was that in the early hours of the 1st, Anna left the house to catch an early flight to go to DC for something work related. So he says that she called for a ride, left to go to the airport, and he really wasn't concerned that he hadn't heard from her because he assumed that she was just busy with work. But there was no proof at all that Anna ever called a ride to the airport, no proof that she ever boarded any flight to DC at all. In fact, no proof of any movements from her whatsoever. And after looking into it, investigators also noticed that no debit or credit cards of Anna's had been used since the 1st. They also noticed that her phone's location was showing at her and Brian's house in Massachusetts on the 2nd, which really made no sense because Brian was claiming that she left to go to DC on the 1st. And apart from her location showing that she was in Massachusetts on the 2nd, there had been no activity on her phone at all since the 1st. All signs signs pointing to the fact that Anna hadn't been seen or heard from by anyone since New Year's Day. As far as Brian's movements on the 1st and in the days following Anna's disappearance, he told authorities that he had been busy running around doing errands for his mom, and he named off some stores that he supposedly stopped at for these errands. However, after checking CCTV footage, there was no sign at all that Brian had been at any of the stores that he claimed to have been at. But do you want to know where he was seen? He was seen on CCTV footage at a Home Depot spending $450 on cleaning supplies. It was January 2nd when he made that big purchase at Home Depot, buying things such as tarps, tape, a protective suit, gloves, mops, brushes, boots, buckets, goggles, baking soda, and a hatchet. He paid for all of that with cash. Sus, because that would be consistent with what he would need to, say, clean up a crime scene or get rid of evidence. And if that wasn't sus enough in itself, he was also seen wearing gloves and a mask when he paid for those items. The very next day, on the 3rd, he was caught on CCTV cameras again. Surveillance footage shows a man matching Brian Walsh's appearance in a car driving to an apartment complex dumpster where he is seen disposing of a heavy garbage bag. Over the course of that same day, he drives to multiple apartment complex dumpsters and gets rid of multiple trash bags that appear to be pretty heavy by the way that he's carrying them. Not all bags that he threw away were able to be recovered, which is extremely unfortunate because who is to say what was in them? The trash had been picked up and the dumpsters had been emptied by the time that the investigation began, which sucks a lot. But in the bags that were able to be recovered, investigators found several items tied to Anna Walsh, including clothing, her vaccine card, her purse, and her boots, and I think also maybe her keys, as well as cleaning supplies such as the tarp and the protective suit that he had purchased at Home Depot, towels, rags, slippers, tape, gloves, and a carpet. A lot of those items were stained red with blood, showing proof of a failed cleanup attempt, and a lot of them had not only Brian's DNA on it, but also Anna's. The following day, on the 4th, Brian was seen at TJ Maxx and Home Goods buying new towels, bath mats, and men's clothing, and just to put the cherry on top, when authorities showed up to his house to look for Anna after her employer had reported her missing on the 4th, when investigators showed up, they saw Brian's car there with the back seats laying down and plastic liner covering the seats. When they came back the next day to talk to Brian again, his car was clean and it looked like it had been freshly detailed and vacuumed. I mean, if you were to write down an instructional manual on how to get caught for a crime, you would list off doing exactly what Brian did. But just in case you're still on the fence on what Brian did or did not do, let me walk you through some of his Google searches. Days after Anna was reported missing, Brian voluntarily gave his son's iPad to authorities. I believe since then it has now been confirmed that the searches were actually made on his laptop but synced to his son's iPad because they shared an Apple account. But either way, some of the searches are as follows. On January 1st, starting at 4:52 in the morning and throughout the entire day up until 2 p.m., best way to dispose of a body, how long before a body starts to smell, how to stop a body from decomposing, 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to, how long does DNA last, can identification be made on partial human remains, how to dispose of a cell phone, my wife is missing, what should I do, how long for someone to be missing to inherit, can you throw away body parts, is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them, Patrick Carney, if you didn't know, Patrick, by the way, is infamous for many crimes and he is known for disposing of his victim remains in trash bags, by the way. And finally, can I use bleach to clean my wood floors from bloodstains? On January 2nd, starting at 12:27 p.m. and throughout the day up until around 2 p.m. again. How to remove a hard drive from Apple laptop. How to saw a body. Hacksaw, the best tool for dismembering a body. Can you be charged with murder without a body? Can you identify a body with broken teeth? Disposing of a body in the trash. What is the rate of decomposition in a body found in a plastic bag compared to a body left on a surface in the woods? Can baking soda mask or make a body smell good? And on January 3rd, body found at trash station. Can a body decompose in a plastic bag? Can police get your search history without your computer? When Brian was confronted about this, his response was, I don't really use that iPad, so that's really weird. After receiving a search warrant to search through Anna and Brian's house in the basement, authorities found DNA of Anna's all over the carpet as well as a bloody knife. It was clear that Brian had attempted to clean up what he did, but even with his attempts, he more than failed. Brian Walsh was initially arrested January 8th of 2023 and charged with misleading the police in the investigation into Anna's disappearance, and 10 days later on the 18th, he was officially charged with first-degree murder, improper conveyance of a body, and misleading police investigation. He pleaded not guilty. Since then, last month on November 2025, right before his trial began, or maybe it was on December 1st, I need to fact check that, but right before his trial began, he changed and pled guilty to the 2 lesser charges, so willfully conveying his wife's body and misleading the police. However, he did not plead guilty to first-degree murder. And he's currently on trial as we speak, and he could be facing life in prison without the possibility of parole. It is the belief of the prosecution that Brian's motive for killing his wife was not only because he believed that she was having an affair leading up to her disappearance, but also because he was the sole beneficiary of Anna's $2.7 million life insurance policy. The prosecution is fighting to prove that he not only killed her, but also dismembered her. And it's also been alleged that Brian's mom hired a private investigator to follow Anna around in DC to get proof of the alleged affair. But because Anna's body has never been recovered, the case relies heavily on circumstantial evidence, including digital logs, forensic findings, and the timeline of Brian's movements. My heart is so heavy for Anna's loved ones right now because I just can't imagine ever in any case having to sit in a courtroom and listen to all of these horrible things, let alone coming from her husband, the person that she loved, the person that she trusted, whatever their relationship status was. Even if they were gonna get a divorce, get the divorce. I don't know, but I just hope that justice is found for Anna and all of her loved ones and her family members. This is horrible. Anyway, I'm sure a lot of you guys are staying up to date with this trial. I know I am, so let me know what you think about this case in the comments. But yeah, that is all I have for today. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. I hope you're having the best day. Now go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you. 18-year-old Anna Kepner was from Central Florida. Earlier this month, she went on vacation on a Carnival Horizon cruise ship with her family, but it was a trip that she never came back from. Anna was expected to graduate this year, and she had plans to join the U.S. Navy. In her obituary, her family wrote, quote, "How could we possibly capture every bit of beauty that was Anna Marie Kepner, our Anna Banana, our sunshine, our baby girl? At just 18 years old, she filled the world with laughter, love, and a light that reached everyone around her," end quote. The cruise was a 7-day trip that left from Miami. Massive ship, obviously. It carried almost 4,000 people. On board was Anna, her father, her stepmother, her biological brother, and her step siblings, who were the stepmother's children from a previous relationship. Her grandparents were also on the ship. And according to them, it was supposed to be a big happy trip with all of them. The grandparents said the family dynamic was pretty close. As far as the kids, they said there were no step siblings. They were all just considered to be one big happy family. Between the kids, Anna's father and stepmother, they had 3 rooms booked. Anna, her 14-year-old brother, and her 16-year-old stepbrother were all staying in one room. The last night that she was seen by her family, on November 6th, Anna had been complaining that she was feeling pain from her braces, so she went back to her room. Later on, she felt better. She met back up with some family members before they all went to their own rooms for the night. The last thing that she said to her grandma was, "I love you guys, I'll see you later," but they never saw her again after that. Anna disappeared on board, and then she was found deceased in her room, hidden underneath a bed, wrapped up in a blanket, and covered up by life jackets. The boat returned to Miami, and Anna's body was removed in a body bag. From what I could find, it sounds like the last night that Anna was seen, she had gone back to her room, and later that night, her brother and her stepbrother returned to the room as well. Her brother changed clothing, left the room again, leaving Anna alone in that room with her stepbrother. When the brother returned, biological brother, he noticed that Anna was not in the room, but he assumed that she was out doing whatever and assumed that she would come back at some point. There's a possibility that Anna was already gone and already hidden underneath the bed when her brother came back to the room and went to sleep. It sounds like there was one queen bed and a set of bunk beds in the room. Allegedly, there's also CCTV footage showing Anna entering her room for the last time, but she's never seen leaving again. And since then, her biological brother has come out and said that when it was only Anna and her stepbrother in that room, he had gone back to the room, but allegedly the door was locked. And shortly after that, he said that he heard yelling, heard the stepbrother yelling something along the lines of "shut up," and what sounded like chairs being thrown across the room. When her family realized that she was missing, when she did not show up to breakfast with all of them the next morning, her father began looking for her when it was announced over the loudspeaker that there was a medical emergency in Anna's room number. It was a cleaning crew that found her body hidden underneath that bed at around 11 a.m. The cause of death was listed as asphyxia caused by an arm on the neck. Anna also reportedly had bruising on her neck. Now, the thing about this happening on a cruise ship is that, one, there are no police on a cruise ship. They have security, but there's no law that requires them to have actual police officers on the cruise ship. And when something happens on board, because it's on international waters, it immediately goes to the FBI. Of course, though, an investigation cannot be started until the ship comes back to port. And I'm not saying that this is the case in Anna's case, but a lot of the times it's literally only staff members from the cruise line until the FBI can get there. Staff members from the cruise line are trying to protect the cruise line, so evidence evidence gets a little bit iffy, and oftentimes things can get delayed until the ship does go back to the port and until the FBI can officially begin their investigation. But that's what happened when the FBI got involved when they returned back to Miami. And very quickly, we realized that the person that they were paying close attention to was Anna's 16-year-old stepbrother. So we know from Anna's biological brother that he heard yelling coming from the room and what sounded like a struggle. Since then, it's also come out that apparently Anna was really scared and uncomfortable around her stepbrother. Anna's ex-boyfriend said that he witnessed strange behavior from the stepbrother towards Anna, saying that he was obsessed with her. He said that one of the strange interactions was when he was on FaceTime with Anna when her stepbrother walked in at 3 a.m, walked into her bedroom and got on top of Anna. Anna's grandma has also described the stepbrother by saying that he, quote, has demons from his past that he has allegedly been trying to deal with. And following Anna's death, the stepbrother was an absolute wreck and what the grandma described to be an emotional mess. Apparently, after everything came out, when Anna's death was finally being looked at as a homicide, the stepbrother had to be hospitalized and sent to a psychiatric hospital, and since then, he has received psychiatric treatment there. He is now being looked at as a suspect. He has not been criminally charged, so he's out right now staying with a third party. The grandma has said that even though the stepbrother has clear issues, the relationship he had with Anna was very close, and she said they had a true brother-sister relationship. Some people question that. However, you guys, we do not know these people. We are not a part of the family. We don't even really know what's going on in the investigation. So I know it's easy to speculate and get those sort of conversations started, but keep in mind that this is a real family. They are mourning a real person who is no longer here, and it's important that we don't believe everything that we see on the internet. The Kepner family has asked for respect throughout this time and for everyone to remember Anna with laughter, color, sunshine, and love, because that is exactly how she lived her life. Quote, she danced in the light she left behind and it will never fade, end quote. That is all I have for today's video. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on this investigation to see how everything plays out. But yeah, hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Growing up, my sister and I were extremely attached to our parents. If they went anywhere, even just to the store, we were like gum stuck to their shoes. We had to go everywhere they went. One Friday, my mom asked if we wanted to go to a quinceañera or visit my brother who was in jail. We had just moved to a new place and I had made a new friend who happened to be the cousin of the birthday girl. So I told my mom I wanted to go to the party. The next morning, my mom asked again if we wanted to go visit my brother. But this time, my sister and I said no. My mom looked a little surprised, maybe even thrown off. She knew how attached we were to her and my dad, and it was unusual for us not to want to go anywhere with them. Still, she brushed it off and decided to go without us. Usually, my parents were back from visiting by 2 or 3 in the afternoon. The jail was only about an hour and a half away. But when it hit 5 o'clock, they still weren't home. My brother got a phone call. He said nothing, just hung up, grabbed his keys, and said he was going to do some laundry. He left my sister and me home alone. We were 12 and 6. Something wasn't right. We sat in silence, scared, crying. Then, around 6 or 7, another one of my older brothers walked in with his wife. I will never forget the look on his face. That's when we found out. Our parents and 3 of our brothers had been in a car accident. My mom was in critical condition. Weeks later, she finally came home, alive. But something about her changed. She started telling us about dreams she had in the hospital. Strange, vivid dreams that didn't feel like dreams at all. In the first one, she said she saw people dressed in white crossing a bridge. She followed them. But when she reached the middle, a huge section of the bridge was missing. She called out to them for help. They turned to her and said, "Go back, you don't belong here." As she turned around, she noticed a tiny, frail old woman walking out of a hut across the river. The woman stepped into the water, carrying a large man in her arms. My mom was shocked. The woman looked so weak, so fragile. The old woman looked at my mom and said, "I was going to take you, but I'll take him instead." When my mom woke up, she described the man to my dad, and my dad went pale. The man my mom saw was someone who had died in the hospital bed right next to hers. He had been brought in with 7 gunshot wounds. She also told us about another dream, one where she floated above her own hospital bed, watching her body from above. But the most chilling thing she told us happened before the accident. That day, she was washing dishes. There was a window in the front of our sink and another behind her. In the reflection, she saw something standing outside. It was La Muerte, death itself, a skeleton watching her. She screamed for my dad, and when he opened the door, every dog in the neighborhood started howling. All of them. The accident happened shortly after. Thankfully, my dad and brother survived with only minor injuries. One of my brothers had been sleeping in the back of the SUV, and when it flipped 3 times, he flew out of the window. He only needed stitches on his foot. After everything my mom saw and everything she dreamed, I couldn't help but wonder. Maybe us deciding not to go that day saved our lives. Because I don't even want to imagine what could have happened if my sister and I had been in that car. Even though I'm a whole 21-year-old now, there's this one totally freaky memory from a middle school summer in San Antonio that still gives me the chills. It was one of those perfect carefree evenings, and my stepbrother was visiting, which always meant late night shenanigans. We had just come back from a skating rink, feeling super cool after chatting up some girls, and decided to keep the fun going with a FaceTime call. Back then, staying up until 3 a.m. on FaceTime felt like the ultimate rebellion. Our party room setup was pretty minimalist. Basically just an Xbox, a TV, and a pile of blankets on the floor. My trusty iPhone was propped up against a book, broadcasting our late night chat with our new friends. We were laughing, gossiping, and being silly, totally absorbed in the conversation. Around 3 a.m., nature called, and we both decided to make a quick dash to the bathroom. We figured we'd be right back, so we left the bedroom light on and our FaceTime session still going. But when we came back, things were not the same. The room was completely pitch black, the kind of dark where you can't even see your own hand. And we swore we had left the light on. I fumbled my way inside, and then, bam, I walked straight into something tall, unmoving, and completely solid standing right in front of me. It wasn't furniture. It felt present, like a really tall, completely still shadow person. My heart jumped into my throat. I let out this piercing scream I didn't even know I could make. My stepbrother, who was right behind me, didn't ask a single question. He just saw me run, and he took off right behind me, screaming too. We huddled in the bathroom, shaking, convinced that whatever it was still in the room. We were too terrified to even whisper, just staring at each other wide-eyed for what felt like forever. Our stepdad is an early riser. Around 4 a.m., he was getting ready for work and must have heard our muffled panic because he came in to check on us. We tried to explain, probably babbling nonsense, about the dark room and the thing. Being the sensible adult, he went to investigate. And of course, when he walked in, the lights were on again. The room was completely empty. Nothing was out of place. Even our friends on FaceTime, who had been silently watching the whole thing unfold, said they hadn't seen anything strange on their end. To this day, I have no idea what happened that night. Was it an illusion, a trick of the mind, or something else entirely? All I know is that summer night left a deep impression on my young mind, and I definitely did not go upstairs alone for a very long time after that.
Cam message and he was like, I want to share the story about how cats are spiritual protectors. He's like, I don't think you're going to use this because it's not really spooky scary, but I like this story. And also, this isn't the first time we're hearing about cats being spiritual protectors or like tied to the divine. Like all throughout history, all throughout different cultures, people worshipped cats. We have ancient Egypt as perhaps the most famous example, where cats were linked to the goddess Bastet, who protected women, fertility, and homes. People would mummify their cats when they passed away and often bury them with the owners. Soldiers in ancient Egypt would reportedly surrender before harming a cat because that's how sacred they were. In Norse and Viking culture, cats were the sacred companions of Freya, who is the goddess of love, fertility, and magic. New brides were often gifted cats, a wedding gift for good fortune, and cats were often thought of as the sacred helpers of practicing witches, which is likely where the modern witch-cat connection comes from. Cats even have a deep spiritual symbolism in ancient Japanese folklore, and while the Japanese didn't necessarily worship the cats, they did believe that they communicated with the spirit world. Many temples even kept cats and considered them spiritually sensitive, and so knowing all this, I'm going to tell you Cam's story. 7 years ago, Cam was dating this girl, and one day she calls him up. She's like, hey, I have an early birthday gift for you. Can I come by? And he's like, sure, come on over. So she gets there. She puts her purse down on the floor. She's like, I know this is unexpected and not exactly what you wanted, but I think it's a good idea. And out of her purse pops a little kitten. And Cam was just kind of looking around like, this is my gift, because he was not a cat person. He said he had grown up with dogs. He considered himself a dog lover, but he didn't currently have one because of his work schedule. Not wanting to hurt his girlfriend's feelings, he's open to it. So he sits down on the floor, and as he sits down on the floor, the cat jumps out of the purse, runs across the floor to him, and starts pawing and purring in his lap. Like, I locked eyes with that kitten, and I was in love. I knew I was keeping that cat. And his girlfriend was like, wow, that's really surprising that she's taking a liking to you. Cam's like, why, what's up? And she's like, well, my friends found that cat. It was feral. It hated people. It scratched me trying to put it in the purse. She's like, I at least thought that it was going to take some getting used to. Cam said he did not get that vibe from her at all. He named her Half a Cat. He said she was this adorable little calico with super deep eyes that looked into the souls of anyone she met. His family, his friends, all loved him immediately after meeting her. Cam said he had a connection with Half a Cat that he has never felt with another animal. They were just bonded somehow that he still can't explain. At this point in his email, Cam told me that he had always struggled with sleep paralysis, like since he was a kid. And in fact, it wasn't until he was older that he realized that not everybody had sleep paralysis. The time that he was a boy, maybe once or twice a week, he would have horrible dreams of dark and horrendous things. The time Half a Cat came into his life, he had been dealing with it so long that he just accepted it as part of his sleep, as part of who he was, and he didn't ever expect it to go away. But about a week after getting Half a Cat, he woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't scream, couldn't move, and he was having that same feeling of pressure on his chest of something in the room. Half a Cat, who was sleeping in a little bed he had bought her next to the bed, jumped up on the bed, ran to the end of it, and started hissing. That as she did, this feeling of relief from this terror that I'd been experiencing my entire life just came over me, and I knew that she saw whatever has been terrorizing me my entire life. The craziest thing is he said that was the last time he ever experienced sleep paralysis after struggling with it for 20 years. Stranger though, Hank wants to say hi. Say hi. Hi. Even stranger though, he had had dreams of strange creatures stalking outside of his windows at night. Anytime he had those dreams, he would wake up to see Half a Cat staring outside the window. He said Half a Cat recently passed away after being with him her entire life. She was very loved, but he wanted to share this because he wanted people to know that if you feel a strange connection to your cat that you think is more than meets the eye, it's because it probably is. Spooky Scary Storytime is a series where I share allegedly true, spooky, scary, unbelievable stories from listeners. If you have a story, we would love to hear it. A woman named Anna is saying that she met a family from a different universe, like a different dimension, when she was 9 in 2001. And she said she doesn't even really tell this story often because nobody believes her anyway. But she swears this really happened. And if you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is a series where I share all of your allegedly true stories, the ones that you think nobody else would believe anyway. We don't judge, we just listen, okay? Anne said she is aware that this story sounds crazy, okay? But when she was 9, this family moved in down the street from her grandparents' house. I'm not sure if Anne was living with her grandparents, but she spent a lot of time there at this point in her life. And it's kind of a quiet town where they're living. And she said when this new family moved in, it was a mom, a dad, and a little girl named Abby. They move in down the street, and Anne is super excited because now she has a friend on the street. There were no other kids that lived on the street. And so they're moving in, and her grandparents tell her, you know, like, let them move in, and then you can go say hi. So as soon as she has the opportunity, she runs down the street, she knocks on the door, she introduces herself. The little girl answers. She's like, I'm Abby. And they pretty much hit it off instantly. And from that point on, Abby was at Anne's grandparents' house like almost every single day. She said her mama even offered to teach Abby how to crochet. And she remembers her getting the yarn and the hook out. It's just a very vivid memory for Anne. She said she remembers Abby watching and smiling, but she never actually took the yarn and the hook. Most of the time they were hanging out at Anne's grandparents' house. But one day, you know, they're bored. And she's like, well, why don't we go to your house, Abby? And Abby's like, okay, we can go to my house. And Anne said it was the first time she remembers going into their house. And she said she remembers it was weird because there was no smell when she entered. Like, you know how every single house has a smell? It's food, it's cleaning products, it's just the family smell. Well, theirs had nothing. It smelled sterile, cold. And she remembers saying like, oh, we should get a snack. Are you hungry? And Abby's like, I can get you something. And so they go to the fridge, and she remembers they opened the fridge up and there was nothing inside, like no condiments, nothing, bare. Abby handed Anne a glass of water like it was totally normal. Anne remembers telling her family too, like they talk funny. Like they don't talk like they're from here. They talk old-timey and polite, like the old shows that her grandpa watched. And Anne said one day they were sitting on Abby's porch coloring, and she just asked Abby, like, where did you guys move from? And Abby says, we're not from here. And Anne's like, oh, what state? And Abby's like, no, not here. And then she kind of whispers, she's like, I'm not really supposed to tell you, but we're like not from here. in general. She goes, do you promise not to tell? And Anne's like, yeah, of course, like we're best friends. And Abby tells her that her parents are here studying people. They're here studying people, trying to decide if humans are ready to join some kind of galactic alliance. She said her dad believed that humans were ready to join, but her mom didn't. Her mom thought humans were too divided. By the way, I'm sharing this story because this sort of piggybacks off the last story that I told, which you guys really seem to enjoy, so go watch that one if you haven't. But obviously they're 9. Like, Anne doesn't know what to make of this information that Abby's telling her. But she keeps her word. She doesn't tell her grandparents what she said, and she said a few weeks later they were just gone. She goes over there in the daytime to like ask Abby to play, and their house was completely empty. Their cars were gone. It was like they disappeared overnight. So she goes home and she's upset, obviously, because Abby didn't say bye. She asked her grandparents what happened. She's like, like, where did Abby's family go? And her grandmother looks at her very strangely, and she's like, honey, no family with a little girl lived there. And Anne's like, what are you talking about? Like, she was over here. You taught her how to crochet. She was sitting at our kitchen table. She said, I have vivid memories of her laughing with me, of us playing day in and day out. I know she was real. But nobody would indulge her. It was like she felt like she was being gaslit by everyone who told her that there was no family with a little girl that ever lived there. She said, it's been 25 years and I still wonder if Abby let me see her. Like, I was the one person that she trusted enough to keep her secret. And she's like, I've had dreams of her. And every time she's in my dream, she's standing under this sky full of lights, but they're not stars. And she's smiling at me like she knows that I remember. She said, I know she was real and I know she was being honest with what she told me. If you have a spooky scary story time, one that you think nobody else would believe, we would love to hear it.
If you have ever felt like your significant other is being unfaithful or not honest, I feel like you're probably right, because us as females, we have that sixth sense when we can always tell when we're being lied to. The person who submitted this wants to be anonymous, so let's call her Amy. Amy and Nathan have been married for about 10 years. Their marriage had been great until one day it wasn't. Out of nowhere, Nathan started acting extremely cold towards Amy. He was going away on these like business trips more and more often, and even when he was home, it was like he wasn't home because he was so distracted on his phone. Feeling like Amy was kind of being pushed away, she decided to surprise him one day and show up at his job with lunch. When she went to his job, she was met by his receptionist, who was extremely cold and like short with her. Amy felt some sort of way about her. She didn't like her, so when she went to speak with Nathan, she brought it up to him and asked, like, what's wrong with your receptionist? Nathan right away shut it down and told her that he didn't know what she was talking about, that his receptionist was very professional, that Amy was just being insecure. Amy, for the sake of her marriage, decides to just ignore that encounter and kind of move on. But as days goes on, she starts to become ill. She's waking up with like chest pains, cold sweats, unexplained bruises, and then her skin starts to go yellow, which really freaks her out. So she decides to go to the doctor. They run a long list of tests, but they can't find absolutely anything wrong with her. So they pretty much just tell her that she's stressed out and that she needs to just take it easy. As the weeks go on, her health continues to decline. Now she's losing a ton of weight. One night she's home alone because Nathan is once again away on one of his business trips. She wakes up in the middle of the night feeling like there's someone in the house. Like, she is terrified. So much so that she gets up and she starts to check all the windows and all the doors to make sure that everything's locked, because she's convinced that there's something in the house, that she can feel the presence of something. When she walks in the living room, she sees a man standing across from her. She says this man must have been about 7 feet tall, that all she can make out is like the dark figure. It looked like he was made out of condensed smoke. When she goes to turn the light on, he disappears, but she says that the image or like the energy is so strong that she feels that if she were to speak to it, that it would speak back. She decides to run to her room and hide under the covers. This is when the smell of rotten meat follows her, and she says it stayed with her for days. It was like this thing was near her at all times. One day she happens to come across one of her friends, who, when her friend sees her, she's completely shocked at what Amy looks like, because at this point Amy has lost even more weight and she looks extremely sick and frail. Her friend asks her, like, what happened? Like, are you okay? Amy tells her what's going on, and her friend right away tells her it sounds like it's something spiritual. If the doctors say there's nothing wrong with you, someone's clearly doing something to you. She's like, I know a lady, this is her information, she is a white witch, she practices white magic, go see her, she will help you. The next day, Amy feels like she has nothing to lose, so she goes to see this lady. The minute she walks into the house, the lady starts to read like the cards to her. The lady's face gets very serious and she looks concerned for Amy, and then she tells her that it looks like someone is doing very, very dark magic in order to Amy, because they want her out of the way. The bruja decides to help her, but she tells her that the only condition is that whatever she takes off of her, she has to return it to its original sender. Amy, of course, agrees, and the bruja begins working. As the days pass, Amy starts to feel better physically. Like, the yellow goes away from her skin, she starts to gain weight. All like the chest pains and the bruises are going away. One day she's sitting at home and she hears the doorbell go off. She looks at the peephole, she sees the receptionist standing there. You know, the one that gave her a hard time.
She says when she looked at the people and got a closer look at the receptionist looked like she was going through something. She had sores all over her mouth or her face. Her eyes were sunken in. Her skin looked yellowish and she looked very fragile and skinny. Now, I'm going to summarize the story or else the story will be like 10 minutes long. Essentially, the receptionist and Nathan, Amy's husband, did have an affair. The receptionist was in love with Nathan, so she went ahead and did some dark magic in order to get him to leave Amy and go to her. Nathan was very much in love with Amy, but the dark magic made it so that he went with the receptionist. After like the bruja helped Amy and cleanse her, it essentially cleansed her husband as well because everything was returned back to the receptionist. So Amy and her husband were able to reconcile their relationship. And the receptionist ended up getting like all of the... everything went back to her. Not long after that, Amy says that she heard that the receptionist actually passed away for an unknown cause, as she had a bunch of illnesses. So whatever she wanted for Amy happened to the receptionist. Amy and Nathan, even though it wasn't easy, they did decide to work on their relationship and they are now stronger than ever. She says that they survived something that was meant to break them, or that it's meant to break most people. They have since moved and started fresh elsewhere, but it's just so crazy to think that this stuff is out there and it happens to so many innocent people that have literally... Amy is just minding her business and this crazy lady just started doing all this. But like always, I mean, what do you guys think? Have you guys had any similar experiences? If you have, let me know. Some things are not always what they seem. Story time. The person who submitted this would like to be anonymous. Let's call him Eduardo. Eduardo's a delivery driver that was delivering pizza one night. When he gets to the address, he knocks on the door and he waits. The minute he knocks on the door, he hears a woman from upstairs say, "Give me a minute, I'll be right there." So Eduardo just kind of stands there and waits for her. When he looks over, there's a window on the second floor. There's a big giant window. He sees a little kid standing there waving at him, saying hi. So Eduardo looks over and says hi back to the little kid. And the kid just continues to say hi like over and over again, which Eduardo finds a little weird because he's like, "I already said hi to you, kid. Like, why do you keep waving hi?" So he thought that was a little odd, but he didn't really think much of it. Just then, the woman comes to the door and she opens it and she apologizes and says, "Hey, I'm so sorry for making you wait. I was like all the way upstairs." Eduardo then goes, "It's okay, no worries. Your son was entertaining me. He was saying hi to me from the window." The woman looks at him confused, like, "What? Who? Like, I don't have a son. There's no one here but me." Eduardo goes, "No, there was a little boy on the second story window there waving at me. Hi." The woman's face completely went pale and she was like, "That's impossible. I'm here by myself. There are no kids here. Like, that's impossible." Then she gets a little like more scared and she goes, "Do you mind just staying here with me until my friend gets here?" She gets on the phone. She calls her friend for her friend to come. Eduardo is confused, but then also feels bad because he just realized that he really scared the lady. But at the same time, he's like, he knows what he saw. Like, he saw a little kid standing there. As he's sitting there with her on the porch until her friend gets there, she begins to tell him that she had just moved into the house 2 months prior, that she was surprised that the house was so cheap in such a nice neighborhood, that after she moved in, she was talking to the neighbors and the neighbors told her that the previous owners, or like the original owners of the house, had a little boy that was autistic, and apparently one day the dad forgot to lock the second floor window. The little boy ended up like opening it and he fell and was unalive like immediately. The family was so distraught that they ended up moving and renting the house out. This is when she moved in. That she had never heard or felt anything in the house until the delivery guy told her that he saw a little boy waving at him from the window, which makes me incredibly sad because it makes me like feel like the little boy obviously did not cross over. He's confused. When a person passes away in such like a drastic way where it's not expected, a lot of times the person doesn't even realize that they've passed on, so he's probably just standing there like waiting for his family to come back. I don't know. This story was submitted by a taxi driver who swears that what he picked up one night was not alive. For the sake of the story, let's call him Carlos. The story took place about 10 years ago. Carlos is a taxi driver for many years. He actually works right outside of Philly, which is not far from where I'm currently living. He was working late one night when he happened to come across a mom and 2 little girls requesting a ride. When he pulls over, the mom and the 2 little girls get in the back seat. The mom tells him where she needs to go, and he goes on to the destination. As they're on their way, Carlos happens to look at the rearview mirror. He sees the 2 little girls playing with each other. The one thing that kind of caught him off guard was that the one little girl looked a little bit pale, and it looked like her clothes was extremely dated, almost like something that you would wear in the 1800s. He didn't think much of it, figured maybe she was playing dress up, and then continued on his way. And out of nowhere, the mom talks to the one little girl and says, you need to cut it out. You need to stop messing and going back and forth. You're going to upset the taxi driver. Like, stop being so loud. Then the mom goes to Carlos and says, I apologize for my daughter being so loud. She has this imaginary friend that we have been trying to get her to stop playing with, but no matter what, she continues to play with this imaginary friend. Carlos is a little bit shocked. He almost gets chills when the mom says this. He checks the rearview mirror now a second time, and now all he sees is just the mom and one little girl there. The pale little girl with the 1800s clothes is gone, like she's not in the backseat anymore. Terrified, he tries to kind of keep his composure. He gets to the final destination of where he's gonna drop off, like the mom and her daughter. When he gets there, he sees as the mom gets out of the car, holding hands with just the one little girl. The other one is nowhere in sight. I 100% believe that he did in fact see a spirit. A lot of times, especially children, are very, very sensitive to the paranormal world. And 9 times out of 10, if your child tells you they have an imaginary friend, like, pay attention. Because I guarantee there's probably some truth behind that. They probably are, in fact, playing with a child. Just not a live one.
You see, if I had to give you an advice, then it would be this one. Never, I mean never, live on the ground floor. And if you're asking, bro, why? Well, here is your response. The thing you're looking at right now suddenly happened to a guy who used to live on the ground floor of an apartment. And if you're asking yourself, bro, what the fuck is this? Well, let me tell you the whole story. It all started when a guy was chilling on his house, okay? It's important to know that it was nighttime and he was doing whatever he wants, okay? He's paying the rent, not you. Anyways, the guy who was chilling decided to go to the living room for whatever the reason. When he made it to the living room and before even turning the lights on, he noticed his cat, okay? That's normal, that's his pet, and she likes to stay in the living room. But the thing is, she had a strange behavior. She was looking at one direction, not even moving. So this got the guy confused. He was like, bro, what the hell is wrong with you? Psst, psst, psst. Whoa, bro, okay, never mind. I'm sorry. But you see, we were friends 2 seconds ago. What the hell happened? What are you looking at anyways? This is what the cat has been looking at all this time, okay? And whatever this is, it got the guy so scared that I'm 100% sure that he pissed his pants. Oh, and he also called the police immediately. Now, by the time that an officer came, this thing was already gone, but the guy didn't care. He just wanted an explanation. So the guy started explaining to that officer, who was like, bro, you won't believe this, but I saw a fucking monster. Do something, please. So the officer's reaction was, okay, let me write that down. You're sure it's not an animal? Bro, yes, I'm 100% sure. Does this look like an animal to you? I mean, yes, it kind of looks like an owl. Do we see the same thing? Are we seeing the same thing? You're saying that this is an owl. Yes, I know what I'm saying. Do you have night cameras, around your house? Yes, I do. Okay then, I want you to go and check them. Okay, bro, I will, but I'm telling you, that's not an bro, I know my stuff. That right, it was an owl, bro. I'm sorry, bro. It was scary. I panicked, so I called you, though. I'm sorry. My cat was freaking out, too. I'm really sorry. Yeah, no problem. I'm just doing my job. Next time, you better double check before you call, though. Before you call somebody and you tell them you have a monster in your backyard, that would be cool. Yeah, bro, I'm sorry, my bad. I mean, you can't even blame me. Look at this thing. It doesn't even look real. Wait, if that's an owl, what are those? What are you talking about? Let me see. That's an interesting question. Bro, no. What do you mean interesting question? I want an answer. Bro, you're asking too many questions and I don't know. You want me to be honest with you? I don't even think that this is an owl. Like, I just said it hoping for you to believe it, and I don't think that's an owl. Oh yeah, until this day, the guy still doesn't know if that's a zombie, a skinwalker, a failed lab experiment, a djinn, bro, call it whatever. And he still doesn't know what are these eyes do.
Every single state in the U.S. has had at least one serial killer, if not multiple. Today we're going to be talking about the worst serial killer from North Dakota. And this guy's terrifying because we didn't know he was a serial killer till years after he died. Which makes me wonder, like, how often that's happening. How often are people killing people, doing horrible things, and we don't know till they're dead? That's so scary. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this is a map of all the different states I have covered so far. But today we're talking about North Dakota, and we are talking about a man named Eugene Butler. He was born in 1849, and we don't know exactly when. We actually don't know what month or day he was born. We just know it was in 1849. So a little background on him. He was born in New York, and then he moved to the Dakota Territory in 1882. And keep in mind, North Dakota was not actually a state until 1989, so about 7 years later. So he moves to the territory, and he ends up living in a place that at the time was in a city. In present day, it's known as the city of Niagara, which is in Grand Forks County. So that's kind of where he was living. It just at the time wasn't as big of a city. He moves there and he purchases a 480-acre farm. That's a huge amount of land. And he's maintaining this pretty much all by himself. He never had kids. He never got married. He barely had any friends or family. The family he did have was in New York and he didn't really talk to them. He was just a recluse. He didn't like to talk to people. He avoided his neighbors. It was just him and his big ass farm most of the time. He sometimes would hire farmhands to help him, especially in the summer months when like there's more to do, but it was still like very limited, and he like actively avoided the community and the neighbors, and like no one really knew that much about him. So as he's living by himself and he's alone all the time, he's starting to like struggle with his mental health. He starts hallucinating. He's saying there are people chasing him, telling people they're like people chasing him while they're standing next to him and they're like, there's no one around you. And so he's saying that like invisible people are chasing him. This is all like happening in the early 1900s. Like it's getting worse and worse around 1902. People don't really know him that much. He's like this recluse guy, and now he's getting crazy. So when they do see him, he's super sketchy. He's like saying weird things. He's again saying that he's hallucinating. He's seeing these invisible people, and this happens for years, and it just gets worse and worse. And by 1906, he's starting to like grab his horse and he starts riding it around in the middle of the night, like screaming. He's passing people's houses. He's going to like onto people's property and just like yelling and screaming. And he's yelling about these invisible people. He's yelling about other things, and people are concerned and terrified and freaked out by this. They're like reporting it to the authorities the next day and all this different stuff, and like people are very concerned. And he ends up becoming so much of a problem that the authorities eventually get involved, and they say he's a public nuisance, and they send him to the hospital and to the asylum. And Eugene told the doctors all about his fears and his paranoia and his hallucinations, which obviously he's not thinking are hallucinations. He's believing they are very real. And he is telling them about invisible figures and how he's scared to have his picture taken. He believed that if he had his picture taken, the camera would suck out his soul. So he was absolutely terrified of cameras. But even with all of this and like him rapidly getting worse, the doctors never thought he was violent or dangerous. He always seemed like kind of not threatening. He was not a very big guy. He was actually on the smaller side. And so no one would have thought he would have been hurting people. No one would have thought he was a serial killer. They just thought he was a little bit crazy and mentally ill. And according to the doctors, he even like tried to be social while he was in the asylum and hospital. Like he even attended events and dances that the hospital would host. And then he even at one point fell madly in love with one of the nurses to like an obsessive level. But still, they never thought he was dangerous. He was like mentally struggling, and many people thought he was crazy, but he didn't seem violent. In 1913, though, on October 22nd, so he's now been in the asylum for about 6 to 8 years, somewhere in there, he ended up dying, and he was about 63 or 64. Again, we don't know exactly when he was born, so we aren't sure exactly how old he was. And after he died, his remaining relatives, there's only a few, they were living in New York, they ended up getting parts of the estate. It was divided in between them, and they wanted things on the property to be changed. And 2 years after his death, they hired some workmen to come and excavate the house that was on the farm and a bunch of different stuff because they were going to renovate the farmland. And one guy is hired by the family, and he is digging in the cellar under the home to start these like renovations when he horribly finds skeletal remains in the cellar. And then as they continue, they find more skeletal remains buried within the cellar and the foundation. And they're like, what did we just stumble upon? Obviously, there was no such thing as forensic DNA. There was not really even like crime scene investigations at the time. They didn't have the science that we have today. So really there wasn't much they could do to investigate, but pretty quickly it's clear that he killed at least 6 people. There were 6 different bodies on this property. Obviously rumors are flying. It's clear he was a serial killer. That's terrifying. And at first the rumors were saying that this was probably an entire family that he had killed that had 2 women in it, and that they had come to visit him and he had killed them pretty immediately on his property. Later, the police come forward and they say that this is not true. There were no women killed on the property, and that there were 6 skeletons, and they were all either young boys, like teenage boys, or young. Some of these were teenagers, which means he was killing children. There wasn't a lot that they could do to like figure out who these people were. But they did say that one of the boys clearly had a crooked nose, and another one was as young as like 15, maybe up to 18 years old. They couldn't quite tell. But again, very young people that he was killing. That is all that they say about the victim. They have never been able to identify a single victim. 6 people were ruthlessly, violently murdered, and none of them have ever been identified. Police have said that they think that like all of them were vagrants or like unhoused or something like that, or they were just traveling through, and that potentially Eugene had hired them as farmhands just for the summer, which would explain why nobody had noticed their disappearance, because they might have just been traveling through. So no one in the area knew these boys. He hired them. They had plans to leave after they had finished their summer job, and then he killed them before they could leave. It is suspected that Eugene probably murdered them because he thought they were going to steal money from his house. Again, he's clearly paranoid. His mental health had been declining throughout this time. They believe he was killing between 1902 and 1906 before he was sent to the asylum. And so this is around the time that his mental health just like plummeted and he was hallucinating and all these different things. So it seems likely that he thought that they were either trying to steal from him or something like that. Also, all of the skeletons were found without any traces of clothing, and it hadn't been long enough for their clothing to just disintegrate underground. So this means that he buried the bodies without any of their clothes, and they didn't find any signs of clothes anywhere on the property, and he could have disposed of them, but they think that he probably burned their clothing, which would indicate SA, but that's never been confirmed or denied either. We know that after he killed them, he disposed of the bodies by building a trap door. He had removed like multiple stones from the bottom of his foundation, like his house's foundation. He built a trap door, and then he would use dirt and clay to cover them up after he put them in this trap door. And that's why when they were digging in the cellar and the foundation, they found the skeletons. So after the news got out about this and rumors are flying, people traveled from all over to see the farm. And the police ended up collecting all the bones, and they transported them in a box to the sheriff's office. But later, the bones went missing and were stolen, which is terrifying and crazy. Who was stealing human remains? Who was stealing the bones of murder victims? That's insane. And some of the case files, the original case file from back in the early 1900s, are also missing or damaged or gone. So most of the evidence that we had for this case is gone. Like, we just don't have much of the original evidence of this case. There is one person that is a suspected victim, but they never were able to confirm or deny it. His name was John Urbanski. He also went by John Miller, and he disappeared from the area in 1902, which is when it's believed he started killing in the first place. And he like suddenly vanished right after writing a letter to his brother, and in that letter he had said he was working for a bachelor in the city, which could fit the description of Eugene. And the letter was postmarked from the town that Eugene like often went into to conduct business for his farm. And so people think this is really interesting and that it's likely he was a victim, but again, we've never been able to confirm it. But even though the authorities have never been able to identify any of the victims, they have said that they think that they could if they had the remains that were stolen. They believe that now with the DNA testing that we have today, they might be able to identify some of the victims, but they don't have the remains that were stolen. They were stolen in like in the late 1910s to early 1920s. I don't know exactly when they were stolen. So probably whoever took them is long gone, which means if they haven't been recovered yet, they probably never will be. But it's clear that Eugene killed at least 6 people. There's actually a lot of theories that he killed way more people. I say this with many different serial killers, but we just don't know for sure. We only know about the 6 that we found in his house. He could have hid people all over his 480 acres and we just would have no idea. It's been over 100 years. It's scary, and it's just so scary that people could kill people and kill multiple people and get away with it forever. And the fact that he wasn't discovered to be a serial killer till after he died is absolutely terrifying.
Scary story time while I fix store-bought slime. I think I met an angel on Christmas Day, so I guess this is not really scary, so let me explain. A lot of people probably aren't going to believe me, but when I tell you this man had this angelic vibe to him, he did. So let me explain everything. I also got this slime from the Dollar Tree, and yeah. Christmas of 2024 was pretty sad for me and my grandma. We felt left out, sad, depressed, alone. The list goes on. I need y'all to keep in mind that the McDonald's was like right down the street from us, and this slime is not pokey. It's like a gooey slime, okay? Get your money's worth in what? Let it drain. We're walking, we're talking, we're sad, all that goopity good stuff. We make it to McDonald's, we order our food, we call family, tell them happy birthday, Merry Christmas, and stuff like that. Out of nowhere, really. My grandma didn't see him walk up. I didn't see him walk up. This man pops up and he just has like this smile on his face. Like he's glowing almost. I can't even explain how angelic he looked. He just looked angelic. Like that's the best way I can say it. He was an older black man and he had like these hoops in his ear and he was smiling ear to ear. And he was like, can you guys buy me like a coffee? And the way he talked, he just talked with reassurance. And off the rip, I was like, yeah, like, because he said, can you guys buy me something to eat? Like, I don't mean to bother you guys, but I'm hungry. And I said, oh, okay. I said, like, would you, I was like, yeah. And my grandma was like, yeah. Keep in mind, my grandma is very protective when it comes to, like, being in New York and people talking to you, because, you know, people in New York be crazy sometimes. Like, for this man, she just was, like, overly, like, happy. So I'm ordering his food. He gets the $5 meal, and everything plain. Like, everything's plain. He wanted black coffee straight, okay? I tell him the order is in, and, you know, the food will be here in a minute. I give him the receipt, and y'all, when I tell you he stuck around us, but, like, not in the way, like, most homeless people are. Like, he was just around us. Like, I can't, like, explain it for real. It's giving me goosebumps because, like, the feeling wasn't scary. It just felt like you're gonna be okay, almost. Most homeless people, when it comes to them asking you for food and all the different types of stuff, they will sit around and they're gonna chat with you, and they're gonna just continuously say thank you and stuff like that. But him, he was just like smiling. Like, I can't like explain it. So after he got his food and he left, I was just like, dang, like that was like low-key weird. And I'm thinking this in my head, right? And my grandma goes, did you see him leave? And I was like, no. And she was like, did you see him like walk up? And I was like, no. She was like I low-key think that was like a good spirit sent to us. Because keep in mind, y'all, we were like sad. Like, we were sad. And I was like, I was thinking the same thing. And my grandma was like, you know what I think? I think that was like an angel in disguise. Like, I don't care. I know a lot of people don't believe in stuff like that. But like, I believe in God. So I definitely believe angels are real. So I'm like, what, like the fact that me and her were thinking the exact same thing. And she's like, yeah, like, I definitely believe that was an angel. Y'all, like, I can't even... With him being as tall as he was, no one looked at him. It was like the only people that seen him was me and my grandma. Like, no one looked at him. No one paid any mind. And keep in mind, I was the one that gave him the food. He had the receipt, but he had went to the bathroom and came back, and he was just smiling ear to ear. And I'm the one that gave him the food. Right? He didn't even go to the counter to pick up the food himself. And I didn't even see him walk out. And giving him his food, I was already getting the feeling that he was like, he had a good spirit on him. And I didn't even see him walk out. I just seen him take the food, and then like next thing you know, he was gone. I think I made the slime definitely more like sticky and like stretchy, but like I don't think it's gonna get any more pokey than this. So yeah. And when I tell you, immediately after he left, the sad feeling that me and my grandmother had was gone. And all we could think about was just like, dang, something good is gonna happen. Something good is gonna happen. Like, the bad feeling we had was gone. It could have just been a person with an extremely good spirit attached to them. But like, y'all, when I tell you, this man, like, it was like he was there 1 second and then he was gone the next. I didn't see him open the door to leave. I didn't see him open the door to come in. And keep in mind, I'm a very observant person. And the fact that I didn't notice a 6 foot, he was like 6'2", big man coming in, I would have noticed that.
Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that they encountered the devil in LA and they nearly sold their soul. I am back with another spooky story, and I don't know if you want to watch this one at night. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Angela. Angela says that she's sending this anonymously because she doesn't want anybody connecting the dots. Just know that she came to LA for music, left when she realized that the devil may not just be a biblical figure and that he lives right here on earth, specifically Los Angeles. Angela goes on to say that people joke about selling your soul for fame. No one talks about how ordinary the first step looks. For Angela, it started with an invite. A friend of a friend told her about a small industry gathering in the hills. Nothing crazy, just networking, good view, a few producers, and a few up-and-coming artists. She says when you're chasing opportunities, you say yes. So she went. She pulls up and the house was gorgeous. The energy felt wrong. When she walks in, it seems like everybody was smiling. Their smiles looked forced. The way people were talking in the house is as though they're whispering. They're talking so low as if they didn't want to wake something up. Angela said the second she felt how she felt, she should have gone home. And then she says someone important, she's not gonna name who, recognized her from a clip she posted and called her voice rare. They got into this conversation, they're talking back and forth. Now this is someone that Angela admired. They get a drink, they're talking. Next thing Angela knows, she's being led downstairs to a private room. The person that she was talking to told her that there was a studio downstairs. He asked her if she wanted to check it out. She was like, sure. When they got downstairs, that's when everything changed. The room wasn't a studio. It was more like a lounge. She said there was red lamps, velvet seats, and one big mirror that covered the entire wall. 2 men and a woman was already inside of that room. They all looked like normal people. However, it seems like these people have been waiting for Angela. So they get in the room, they ask her to sit, and they ask Angela a few questions. First question was what she wanted from music. Angela said the usual: success, stability, impact, tours. Now, Angela said that the way that these people were listening is as though they've heard this exact story like 1,000 times before. After Angela gets done, the woman leans in and says, "We can give you all of that, but nothing in this city belongs to you for free." Angela says whole time she's laughing because she thinks the lady is being metaphorical. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. She opens a small leather case, slides it across the table, and inside was a sheet of paper. Not a contract, not a deal memo, something else. Old. Too old. The writing itself wasn't even in English. The paper itself had a weird smell radiating off of it. It smelled of incense and ash. She looks at the paper and told them that she didn't understand it. And now one of the men smiles and says, "You don't have to understand. You just have to sign and the city will take care of the rest." Angela, at first she froze. Then she gets annoyed. Thought this was some weird hazing ritual. She said she wasn't signing anything without reading it first. And y'all, the woman tilted her head and said, "You already read it. You read it the moment you walked in this room. It's been waiting for you since you got off the plane." Angela gets distracted because she could have sworn she saw something flicker in the mirror. When she looks up, it wasn't a glitch. She caught a reflection that wasn't in the room. She saw from the mirror that it was a very tall figure standing way too close, watching her. When she looks around her, she sees nothing. At that point, Angela stood up immediately. Temperature drops like it's suddenly freezing cold in this room. Her throat starts to tighten up as if someone was choking her. Man says, "If you walk away, you will never know success, because we're giving you the success right here." Angela says she pushes them back and ran up the stairs. The party upstairs was still happening like normal, like nothing just happened downstairs. When she steps outside, the whole house went quiet behind her. She says she gets home and she says that night and forward, she had the worst nightmare of being trapped in hell. Her life started going downhill. You will never believe how this story ends. I honestly can't believe it. If you want to hear how Angela's story ends, this is already 4 minutes long, so leave a comment for part 2. Make sure you hit the plus button for more spooky content.
Every culture has its own relationship with death, right? In Japan, there's the saying, "Shinderu hito wa nandemo sakasama." It translates to, when it comes to dead people, everything is reversed. What does that mean? For example, a kimono or yukata, they are normally worn with the right side wrapped over first. But for the deceased, it's the opposite, left over right. Even their shoes get switched to the wrong feet. All of it done deliberately so the living can tell the dead apart from everyone else. There's even this chilling tale about a couple driving home late one night after a summer festival. Then they spot this boy on the side of the road wearing a yukata. So the girlfriend tells her man to pull over, but instead of stopping, the boyfriend just speeds up. The girl is furious, but then in this quiet, shaky voice, he finally speaks. Did you see his yukata? It was backwards. He wasn't human. But today's story isn't about yukata or ghost shoes. Today's story is about how something as simple as a clap, just putting your hands together, can bring malice into someone's life. So let me tell you about a man named Tsunku. If you're into J-pop, you've probably heard of AKB48. But have you heard about Morning Musume? Back in the day, they were massive. Morning Musume had Tsunku. This guy was a genius, a producer, a songwriter. He created hits that broke records. But before all that, he was actually in a rock band called Sharankyu. At a time when not many Japanese bands were doing their style of music, they blew up. Tsunku achieved everything. Success with Sharankyu, legendary status with Morning Musume. And then everything came crashing down. In his prime, Tsunku was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer. For someone whose entire life revolved around music and producing, whose career was built on his voice. This was devastating. He tried everything, the best doctors, every treatment available. At one point, the cancer actually shrunk down to almost nothing, but it came back. And in 2015, Tsunku made the hardest decision of his life. To survive, he had to remove his vocal cords entirely. He couldn't sing anymore. he could barely speak. Junko didn't give up. He stayed in the industry, working behind the scenes as a producer, creating music, managing artists. A tragic story, but an inspiring one about resilience.
So I had to go to the post office on 63rd by Halsted today. That place is fucking haunted. Boom boom, it's story time. Boom boom, paranormal Chicago activity with Cat G. Everybody and their mama know that post office is haunted as hell, okay? I'm not gonna say this man name too many times. Matter of fact, this is gonna be my first time and my last time, because once you speak him up, he come. That's one of H.H. Holmes' old stomping grounds, okay? That place is creepy. Everything about this building feels cold. And don't sit up here and be like, well, Cat, it's snowing outside. Fuck you! That ain't what I mean. Y'all know what the hell I mean. The building, it feels... Last time I was at this place, I was a kid. I was with my auntie. She told me, when we go in here, don't touch nothing, don't talk to nobody, just stand right here, be quiet. Okay, cool. I don't understand why I can't just stay in the car. She like, no, you can't do that. There's too many police over here. They sitting up here, they mad as hell because we leave the kids in the car. Just stay your ass right here, don't do nothing. I don't want to be in this place. Every part of my star child is screaming. I had to be somewhere around 7, maybe 8. My mama and my grandmama had stories about how they went to that damn post office and they went around the corner to the little Mexican lady and got an egg cleanse once they left up out of that post office. So I don't want to fucking be here, okay? I'm standing there, I'm out of my own business. It's a lady that's standing behind the desk. She just looking at me. Won't stop looking at me. It's a whole line of people. She could be taking another customer. This bitch is still looking at me. I started feeling tingles on the back side of my neck. I don't like it. So instantly, I go on the shutdown mode. It started getting so cold in the post office that you could see your breath. A lady standing in the line, she get to complaining. She like, y'all can't turn on the heat. Everybody else in the line, they starting to get real life agitated. Like, you can literally see anger washing over them. Everybody auras is turning muted red, like red clay. I don't like it. I walk up to my auntie, I said, auntie, we need to go. She turned around, she looked, she blinked 3 times. She said, okay, I need like 2 more minutes. Do I got 2 minutes? Girl, you pushing it. Something is coming. We gotta go. The lady that was watching me, she walks over to the window where the lady that's helping my auntie. She said something to that lady. They both walk off. Where the hell you going? Bitch, come back. We got business to do. We standing there. I'm getting anxious as hell. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I get to fidgeting and stuff. My auntie like, please not right now. And I'm like, yeah, I can't control this. We got to go. She looked at me. She said, can't control what? I don't know what's coming. We got to go. I don't like the way it's feeling. She said, we can't go. They got my ID. Man. The postmaster come up to the window. I look at him and every part of me is cold. Every hair standing on end. Red flags, wait. I squeeze my auntie hand. She look at me, she look at him. She's coming there to change the address and to pick up packages from her P.O. box. He is trying to get her to come back there and get the packages from the P.O. box. But that's not how that's supposed to go, because civilians not supposed to go back there. My auntie instantly, no, I'm not going back there. You can just put the packages in a little slot and I'll pull them through. Everything will be fine. He said, well, no, it'll just be easier if you come back here with your cart, put everything in the cart, and you could just go on out the door. She say, no, I'm not doing that. The lady say, well, you could send her back here with the cart and put it in a cart for her, and then she'll bring it around. Girl, not stupid. What? Why? Why would you say some shit like that? If the adult can't come back there and get the goddamn mail, why would you think that the adult is gonna send the kid? Are you what? The tingles on the back of my head ain't tingles no more. These are scratches. I throw up black obsidian walls around my mental space. Cause hell no, nope, you not getting into this. You know how like your knee get a little weak and you dip a little bit? That's what my auntie did. I knew something happened to her, so I grabbed her hand and I get to doing the mantra over. She look at me, I look at her. I said, we got to get the fuck up out of here. Ain't too many times that I curse. And ain't too many times that I curse. I'm not a disrespectful kid. I'm not a bad kid. So you know, we got to go, girl. We got to get up out of here. Remember, that it was people in the post office. We not the only civilians in the fucking post office. As I'm telling my auntie, we here. We got to get up out of here. The lady behind the window say, where you gonna go? We both look at her. Bitch, what? Even the postmaster looked over at her. He look annoyed. Her mask is breaking. She can't hold it in no more. The whole time I've been doing mantras. Like the whole time I've been doing mantras. But for a hot second, I focused only on my auntie because I knew something just tried to get her and it almost got her ass. So I took focus off of the area around us and only focused on us. Now that I'm looking for the dough to get up out of here, I notice it ain't no people in the motherfucking post office. Before I can say something, my auntie say, where everybody go? Oh, ancestors, hit me. I need help. I need help. I need help. Somebody got to come in here and get us. Somebody got to come in here and get my auntie like, fuck that ID. We'll come back with the police. We get to the, as we're trying to walk to the door, I feel like it's a glue trap on the floor. We can hardly move, but we fighting. We getting to the, I hear something from behind the wall growl. This wall is a wall of, what you call them? P.O. box. My auntie say, pray harder. Bitch, you ain't got to tell me. You ain't got to tell me. We get to the door, this motherfucker is locked. We can't push. I pray harder. As I'm praying harder, the door pushes a little bit. You know how like you push the door, but like maybe something is on the other side or some wind is pushing it back on you. So like it pushed, but it bounced back closed. That's what's happening. We hit a lady say, somebody get them. I say out loud, I need help now. Send it now. And the door opened up. Who do I see? A police officer. Not just any police officer. It's one of the police officers that my daddy is cool with, who is in charge of the DARE program. Hallelujah for this little lady. Here's the crazy part about this woman. I can describe her to a T, but I cannot remember her name unless I am in real trouble and I need real help, and then her name come right to me. Right now, I can't fucking think of this lady name to save my life. It is pissing me off. But she opened up the door and she look at me. She say, what you done got yourself into now? The postmaster is coming out the side door. He's stopping his tracks. He look. She look at him. She say, is it a problem? My auntie say he got my ID and he got all my packages. She said, is it a reason why? He can't say nothing. She said, oh, okay. Release it. The police officer look at me like she really look at me, and I can feel that she's trying to read me. All I feel is warmth all over my bro. I let her in for a second. She see what I see and she, oh, okay. She grabbed the wagon. She go back there, get our shit, come back with her. We get outside. She like, don't come in here no more. Don't bring her in here no more. She not supposed to be in here. You know she not supposed to be in here. My auntie like, I know, but I couldn't leave her in the car. I had to come and get the stuff. What you want me to do? She said as soon as somebody would have walked up to this car and she would have said her last name, they would have known who her daddy is and she'd have been all right. Don't bring her back up in here. We got home. My grandma was mad as hell. Oh, she was mad as. We didn't even have to go in the house. When I tell you my grandma was sitting on the front porch with a switch in her hand. Baby, I'm talking about old school house phone, the cordless phone, on her neck like this. She just patting the switch in her hand. Yup, they just pulled up. You in trouble. You in trouble. I told you should have left me in the car. You in trouble. I hopped out the truck. I walked up to the steps. My granny said, go upstairs. You ain't got to tell me. I don't want no part. Usually, you would be able to hit anything from my window. And the reason why is because where my room was, it's upstairs. It's on top of the gangway. For those of you who do not know, in Chicago, we got pathways on the side of our house that go from the front of the house to the back of the house, all the way to the alley. We call it a gangway. The gangway is in between the houses because the houses and the buildings is made out of bricks. It make an echo. A echo? A echo, bitch. Echo. A echo. Hello. A echo. Okay, right. So up in my room, I could normally hear everything. I couldn't hear shit. All you could hear is next thing you know, I hear, you can come downstairs. I come downstairs. I look at my auntie on her legs, baby. She had some whips. Yes, a whisper about my goddamn ass, boy. You should have took me in that motherfucking haunted ass post office. The hell wrong with you?
Has this ever happened to you? This is a true story of our village soul hunters who only walk through after midnight searching for souls. Story time. So growing up in our village, we have always been warned several times by the elders, by our parents, that anytime we hear a humming sound, anytime we hear singing, anytime we hear drumming, never to look, never to listen, never to open the door. I just thought they were trying to scare us not to go out. They were trying to scare us not to know what exactly is going on. One night, I was waking up at midnight to this humming sound. It wasn't just of one voice, but a lot of voices. And I thought, I'm going to peek through and check what is going on. When I opened the window, I could see these ghostly figures. Eyes bright and shining. They were humming, floating in air. This was going on at the village square. Our house isn't far from the village square. I was shaking because I've never seen anything like that before. But I kept watching. When I looked closely, I saw that they had no faces. It was smooth. It scared me. But the scariest part is, one of the figures turned around and looked at my direction. To me, I thought he had seen me. I crouched down and then stood up. When I stood back up, they were gone. I went to bed, not even caring or thinking about what happened. So I told my mum about what I saw. Immediately, she screamed. She knelt on the ground and she started praying. She forced me to kneel and start praying as well, which I did. Then I asked her what they are. She told me I wasn't supposed to see them. I saw them and they saw me, which means they will be coming for me next. I didn't dare to ask my mum further questions. She prayed and prayed. Then she went ahead to do a few sacrifices. Tell me why. The following night, at exact same time, midnight, fast asleep, I'm woken up again by this humming sound. Only this time, the humming sound was closer to home. Just as my mother advised, they were coming after me. I promised myself I wasn't going to look. I covered my face with the blanket. But then, I got curious. I wanted to see if they were at the village square or coming to our house. I opened the door slightly, and I was frozen. They were stood outside our house. I knelt, and I started praying. But tell me why I could hear my name being called. I got scared, and I carried on praying. Then, I hear my mum cry out. My mum started praying, chanting some words that I have never heard my mum say. She pleaded, she begged. They looked at my mum, and they vanished. The next day, my mum had to do more sacrifices. But ever since, I keep hearing the humming sound, my name being called, exactly after midnight. Now, I don't know what's going to happen next.
When I heard this, I immediately knew that I had to share it with you. These are pickle jar earrings from Spencer's. They're so cute. So this story comes from a Spanish Reddit post where the guy says that he adopted 4 dogs that he had found abandoned on the street. In the beginning, everything was fine, everything was normal, but then he said he started noticing that the dogs were acting really strange. For example, there was one time where he was out in the garden and I guess the dogs didn't realize that he had came back into the house, and when he walked in on them, they all looked at him and started acting strange, almost like if they were hiding something. This is the part that gets me, and this is the part that freaked this guy out the most too. He started to notice that every time he would lay down to go to bed at night, each dog would kind of look into his bedroom, like they would just peek their head in because he would sleep with the door open to let them, let them go in and out as they please. He started noticing that he thought each dog would look in there just to make sure he was asleep, or at least that's what it felt like. In the beginning, he's like, oh yeah, that's weird, but like this is the first time I ever catch the dog doing it because I had just laid down and I couldn't fall asleep. But then as the days would go on, he said that it was almost as if each night each dog had a different turn to check in and see if he was asleep. So for the next 4 nights, he would notice that one dog would check in on him that night. The next night it was a different dog. They would take turns looking into his freaking bedroom just to make sure he was really asleep. He got really curious and he's like, there's no way that these dogs are checking in to see if I'm asleep, or why would they be doing this? So there was one night where he decided he was gonna pretend to be asleep. He waited for whatever dog's turn it was that night to look into his bedroom. He could see it, like his eyes were barely closed. He noticed that they checked in. They were like, okay, he's asleep. And that is when he decided to slowly get out of bed and go into the living room. When he walked into his living room, he says that each dog was sitting on its own like chair, and it was almost like if they were communicating with each other, but not in in English, they were almost like growling and barking in a very low tone. The reason why he says it was as if they were communicating or having a conversation was because they would each wait a turn. Like if one of them was barking or growling, the other ones would wait until that dog was done and then answer like if they were communicating. He went as far as to say that when he was standing there watching them very quietly, he noticed that when one of them was like, it was its turn to talk, another dog interrupted whoever was talking, and then the other dog almost got mad at this dog for interrupting. So that's why he's like, this is a full fucking conversation. He was so scared that he immediately goes back to his bedroom, but that's also the moment where he heard complete silence, and he's like, fuck, they know that I am awake, or they know that I saw them, or they knew something. But he lay down his bed, pretends to go to sleep, and not even 10 seconds later, a dog walks into his bedroom, you know, kind of to see if he's asleep or not, and he was pretending to be asleep. I don't know how he could pretend. I would have been crying in the corner of that bedroom. Now, he explains that he did not get rid of the dogs, but he just became more aware of what they were doing. He said that the dogs also became aware that he knew what they were doing, because now it wasn't so much that they went and like checked in if he was asleep. Now, one dog would take a turn at night to literally lay down on the floor next to his bed and make sure he goes to sleep. I don't know what they were up to, but it doesn't seem like they wanted to hurt him. Maybe they just wanted a home, and he just so happened to take them in. Like, it does freak me out, but I don't think that they were up to like something bad. Like, if anything, they just didn't want to get caught talking. But why would the dogs need to talk? I don't know. Like, it's scary, but also like not scary. But also it's not scary because it hasn't happened to me yet. I think I'd probably be scared. Or at the very least, like, why can't I join the club? Why can't I sit on like the couch and just know what the fuck y'all up to? I'm so nosy though. I'm so nosy. I would just want to know what the fuck you're talking about. What do you guys think?
On December 2nd, 2008, Blaine Keith Milan committed one of the most brutal crimes. The crime against Amora Bain Carson. Amora was only 13 months old, and on December 2nd, 2008, Blaine, who was her mom's boyfriend, called 911 stating that he had found this poor baby unalived. The police show up, and both Blaine and his girlfriend, which is baby's mom, Jessica Bain Carson, are both questioned, and they both gave so many stories, and they ended up saying that the baby had passed due to an exorcism. They said that this poor 13-month-old baby was possessed, and that they had done an exorcism for about 30 hours. The medical examiner said that this was the most brutal case that he had ever done, because there was so much physical evidence. There was bites, there was hammers used, there was just so many things that this medical examiner just could not fathom. It was so much that the medical examiner could not determine the cause of death because there was just so many injuries that were inflicted on this poor baby. On June 11, 2010, Blaine, at the age of 20 years old, was sentenced to capital murder, and he was ultimately sentenced to death. Jessica Bain Carson, who was baby Amora's mom, was his accomplice, and she was given life without parole. On September 25th of this year, 2025, Blaine Keith Milam was executed by lethal injection. Did have a last meal. His last meal was cheeseburger, fries, green beans, rice, some bread. And one of his last words was, "Thank you to all. I love you all. Bring me home, Jesus." I love all kinds of spooky stories, but for some reason, death row stories are also so fascinating to me, so I will be doing a deep dive into many death row cases. And if y'all are interested and want to come along for this ride, please make sure you follow.
Weird Spooky Christmas Stories. This was a demonic experience that changed his life. This is from a Reddit user who said he never believed in the paranormal nor his family's Christian beliefs, till something happened in his teens that he says he will never forget. He said when he was 12 years old, he was super fascinated by the supernatural, ghosts, witchcraft, conspiracy theories, demons, all of it. But he'd never experienced anything for himself. When he was 12 years old, his family was looking to buy a house, and there was one house that they were looking at, but his mom ended up seeing like a little girl looking through the window, and she was like, no way. So they ended up buying a house like a couple doors down. Right after they moved in, the previous owner shows up on their doorstep and was like, hey, just so you know, my mom unalived in this house and sometimes shows up, but don't worry, she's friendly. Later, the family became friends with some of the neighbors who said that they actually lived in that house that they first looked at where the mom saw the ghost girl in the window. They said it was extremely haunted by a malevolent man and a little girl. They said that their kids had traumatic experiences in that house. He said this was the first time in his life that he'd seen a group of people confirm a supernatural event. That when he was 14 or 15, he was still really into the supernatural, but still had not had any experiences. He said nothing ever worked until he got a Ouija board for Christmas. He tried using it alone in the basement, but nothing happened. At least in that moment. But he said everything changed after that. Over the next few days and even months, he started noticing strange activity. Lights would flicker, doors would move, objects would shift, his dog started acting scared. He said he wasn't scared at first, because he thought he'd opened the door to a real paranormal experience, and that was exciting to him. He said the activity escalated for years. He said there were cold spots in the house, things throwing off the shelves, he would hear knocking. He said dolls and toys would activate without batteries. Even his TV would go static, even unplugged, and blast at full volume. He saw what he believed was his very first ghost sighting. A woman in a pink dress that he assumed was the mother of the previous owner. But then the activity got darker. His closet door would open even when it was locked or blocked. He'd feel something crawl into his bed, physically pressing the mattress down. He said that when people in the house were sleeping, he'd see their arms rise as if somebody was picking them up. This even happened to his little brother, who woke up when it was happening and got so scared he ran in terror against the wall because he didn't know where else to go. The breaking point came when he was in the basement with his Chihuahua baby. The dog suddenly became aggressive, growling at something in the dark. Behavior that was totally out of character for her. Then she cowered and fled. He said there was another time where he was pinned down by an invisible force, with his arms locked to his sides, and his back forced on the couch. He said when it was happening, he felt a hatred that was so intense that it had to have been inhuman. He said he began running through the house when it finally let him go, and that light bulbs were exploding as he ran by. His family was sleeping when this happened, and he tried waking them up and they wouldn't. He said he jumped into bed with his brother, and then it happened again. The force overtook his body and pressed him down. He said it kept happening over and over again. He said after about the 10th time, he couldn't take it anymore, and he cried out for Jesus for help. He said everything stopped instantly. The next day, his parents helped him get rid of the Ouija board. His mother, years later, admitted to him that she actually drenched it in gasoline and tried to burn it, but it wouldn't burn, so she had to just throw it away. Later in life, he told his father what had been happening to him, and then his dad ended up saying that he had paranormal experiences as a kid as well, and that praying to Jesus actually helped stop the experiences for him too. He says for 15 years, he has not experienced anything like that again. The Reddit user said that he did not exaggerate any of these experiences, and that everything truly did stop when he prayed. What's crazy to me about this story is that when his dad revealed to him that something happened to him when he was a kid and he prayed, it went away. It makes you wonder if this was like a generational demon, and getting that Ouija board made it resurface. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if you've ever had a strange experience like this, send it my way.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, the haunted tea spell, necklaces, great stocking stuffers, or gifts in general for Christmas. The initial one comes in a pack of 2, and this one is a new one that I got. It's a tarot card, and it comes in many different varieties. All of them are cute and cheap. Anyway, on to the story. I was about 6 years old playing outside in my grandma's backyard. The house wasn't that old, but it was located in a sketchy part of town. As a kid, I didn't have a super big imagination, as I was shielded from most of the outside world due to my very religious background. I knew about demons and spirits and could even see them at times. Anyways, I was always excluded in games with my brothers just because we had different interests, so it was normal for me to play by myself. I remember going outside to the swing set and seeing it move. Mind you, it was in the middle of summer and there wasn't even a draft. After a moment, I saw a set of twins. They weren't identical, but I was watching them just play on the swing set and I was able to communicate with them. It was weird. I told my grandma and she told me not to go outside again by myself. Weird. Very weird. Now living in a different house, I was 12 and I kept on thinking about those twins. They would appear in my dreams when I would go to sleep, or I would mindlessly daydream and it would end with them. This continued on for a week and I started seeing paranormal activity in my house. Nothing that I wasn't used to. I never understand. But one day I was outside swimming in my pool trying to get my last 5 minutes in before my mom told me that it was time to head inside. And then my attention got focused on the window that peered into the stairway. Although my mom was talking to me in that moment, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And after staring for a few seconds, I saw my dad go upstairs. And quickly after, the lights turned off. Then I saw the twin girls chase my dad upstairs. But it was deformed and it looked weird. If you saw it, you wouldn't be able to tell, but I just knew. Later that night, I went to sleep and had sleep paralysis. I was facing my wall and I saw the twins again, but it was like I had eyes on the back of my head. I wasn't scared at first, just shocked. But then the twins turned into actual 6-foot-tall demons. They looked like hairy beasts, and I still don't remember how I got out of that sleep paralysis stage. I just knew after that. I read a bunch of scriptures and put on worship music. Praise God. I'm not even that religious anymore. I'm the type of Christian who prays before meals and before bed, but that's it. But whenever I get deep in my faith again, I always see them. What's even weirder is that I always experience paranormal activity during the summer. Almost every year I hear screams coming from the fields. That's weird. It's trippy. It is. I just don't entertain it or pay too much attention to it, or I'm bound to experience more paranormal activity on a whole other level like I did that day. That was different. That's weird. That's crazy. I don't like that. But anyway, rated on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being really scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. Twin demons is very scary. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see you all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
There's still some debate about what exactly happened in this story that I'm about to share with you. And so for transparency, in this video, I am going to rely on the narrative that was presented in court by the defendant. And so with that in mind, here we go. On the afternoon of December 3rd, 2012, a freelance photographer working for the New York Post newspaper named Umar Abbasi was walking down the stairs of the 49th Street subway station in New York City. This very busy station is located only a few blocks away from the very famous Times Square. And so after Umar made his way down to this underground subway station, he walked over to one of the big automated kiosks that looks like an ATM, and he purchased a subway ticket. And then with his ticket, he walked over to the turnstiles, he slid his ticket through the slot, pushed past the turnstiles, and was now standing out on the actual train platform. And from where Umar was standing, this platform basically was like a huge sidewalk that stretched all the way to his right a couple hundred feet and all the way to his left a couple hundred feet. And in front of this platform were the actual tracks down below, because the train, when it came out of the tunnel, it would actually come right up alongside this platform with almost no clearance between the platform and the train. As such, the leading edge of the platform, basically the lip of the train platform that's closest to the train tracks, has this big yellow line painted all across it to keep commuters from standing too close to the edge, because if the train came through, they could actually get hit by the train. And so as Umar is standing on this platform and he's looking left and right, it's totally crowded with people and they're all kind of tucked back against the wall away from this yellow line. And so Umar decides he's going to turn right and wait at the right end of the platform, just because he saw down at the far end there appeared to be a gap in people, and he figured he could stand right there. And so Umar begins navigating past all of these people on the right side of the platform, and for the most part, everyone he is passing either has their head buried in their phone or they're listening to music or both. Because the thing about riding trains, especially trains in busy cities, is none of the commuters want to talk to anybody else. They want to be completely left alone. And so as Umar is walking, everyone was basically doing that. But at some point, he did pass two people that were engaged in a pretty heated conversation. Umar had no idea what they were arguing about, or if they were even arguing at all. He didn't know who these people were, but he took mental note of the fact that two men were kind of bickering with each other. And so he walked past them, didn't give it much of a second thought, and he arrived at a gap in the gaggle of people waiting for the train. And there he just stood well back of the yellow line, where he pulled out his camera and began clicking through the images he had taken earlier in the day at an earlier photo shoot. And so as he's clicking through these pictures, he starts to notice that those two men who had been bickering before are now straight up yelling at each other. They're screaming obscenities at each other. It's not clear who's fighting about what or who was the aggressor, but it's very obvious that at this point they're fighting. And so Umar looked away from his camera and looked left down the platform towards towards these two guys. And so these two guys are about 100 to 125 feet away from him, and all the people that were standing in the vicinity of these two men are beginning to migrate away from them. They just don't want anything to do with them. Because the thing about being in subways, especially in cities like New York, is there's lots of people that go down into these train stations that are inebriated or mentally unstable, and so very strange and bad behavior is just kind of a normal thing, and people tend to just kind of ignore it. And so that's what's happening. People are kind of walking away from these two fighting men, doing their best to pretend it's not happening. And so Umar spent a couple more seconds staring down the platform at these two men, but eventually just shrugged and thought, you know what, whatever problems they have, they're not mine. And so Umar went back to his camera and continued to click through his pictures, when all of a sudden he hears a scream coming from the left side of the platform. But it was not a scream that sounded like it came from either of these two men. And so Umar looked up from his camera and looked left down the platform, and now he just sees chaos. It's people running away from these two men. People are running to get away from whatever is happening around them. And so Umar's thinking these men must have come to blows, and they're now fighting actively, physically with each other. But when finally the crowd kind of cleared for a second, he saw a woman pointing down at the train tracks right in front of where those two men had been standing. And so Umar looks at the woman and he follows her finger down onto the tracks, and he sees there is now a man, one of the two men who had been fighting, laying face down on the train tracks. And then, to Umar's horror, he looks up down the tunnel where the train would come out of, and he sees the headlights of the train. It is now coming into the station. And so Umar starts running down the platform to try to get to this man to pull him out of the tracks. And as he's running, he pulls out his camera and he turns the flash on and he holds the shutter down and he aims it at the train conductor to hope the flashing of his camera will alert the train conductor to put on the emergency brake and stop the train before he hits this guy down on the tracks. And so as Umar is running, trying to signal this train conductor, the man down on the tracks tries to stand up, and Umar sees he's really struggling to stand, and when he finally gets up, he turns and he grabs the edge of the platform and he tries to pull himself up and out of the tracks, but he doesn't have the strength or the coordination. And as Umar is getting closer and closer, but he's still too far away to help, he sees that this guy down on the tracks is not going to be able to get out of there before the train hits him. And so Umar finally comes to a stop, and he watches as this man down on the tracks lets go of the lip of this platform and just turns and faces the train like he knows what's about to happen. And then seconds later, the train, although it did try to stop, impacted this man and killed him instantly. The man's name was Kai Sakhan, and he was 58 years old. When the police finally showed up, they arrested the other man who Han had been fighting with. He was a 30-year-old named Naeem Davis, and Davis would actually tell police that he had been fighting with Han, and he had pushed him onto the tracks, but it was in self-defense. However, that self-defense story didn't stop him from being charged with murder. While Davis sat in jail waiting for his trial, the media and the public at large had already come to the conclusion that Davis was guilty. And this was due in large part to a particular picture. As Umar was running down the platform, holding up his camera, holding the flash down, trying to flag the train conductor to get him to stop, Umar was also taking dozens and dozens of pictures. And those pictures were of Han right before he was struck by the train. And so after Umar ultimately discovered he had taken these pictures, he gave them to his employer, the New York Post newspaper, and the day after the incident, they ran on the front page a picture of Han right before he's about to be killed with the headline, "Doomed." And so once the public saw this picture, nobody could believe that Davis was anything other than a cold-blooded killer for pushing this poor innocent man onto the tracks. But as it would turn out, nearly 5 years later, when Davis did finally get his trial, he was acquitted of all charges, because it turned out Han was very drunk and had picked a fight with Davis, and Davis was filmed on more than one occasion on the platform trying to get Han to leave him alone. And so finally, after Han began making death threats and then grabbed Davis's shoulder, Davis turned around and pushed him, and Han, being drunk, stumbled and fell backwards onto the tracks and then was ultimately killed. In 1949, 15-year-old problem child Ken Rex McElroy dropped out of school and moved to a tiny farming town called Skidmore, Missouri. There, he began his life of crime, which consisted primarily of theft. At night, he would drive his truck onto Skidmore residents' property, and he would steal their livestock, alcohol, grain, food, antiques, anything he could get his hands on and that he could sell, he would take. And if the owners ever caught him in the act, he would just raise his rifle at them and tell them to go back inside and never report it to the police, or he would kill them. And because Rex was this big 270-pound monster of a man who was known for having a bad temper and for being really aggressive, people generally just did what he asked, and his crimes went totally unreported. In the rare instances that victims would report Rex's crimes to police, Rex would begin intimidating them and their family by staking out their houses at all hours of the night, or he would just walk directly up to these victims and he would say, "I will kill you if you testify against me." And if none of those tactics worked, Rex used some of his illegal money to hire one of the very very best defense lawyers in the entire state, a lawyer who had famously represented the mob, and he would step in and get Rex off of virtually any charge, including the time Rex actually did shoot one of the owners who caught him in the act. Over the years, Rex would use these fear and intimidation tactics not just to make money, but also to prey on young women and girls. In the 1970s, when Rex was in his 40s, he began stalking a local Skidmore girl who was 12 years old named Trina. After assaulting her dozens of times, Rex learned her family was going to be pressing charges against him. So Rex burned down Trina's family's house and killed the family dog, and then threatened to kill the entire family unless they signed paperwork that would legally marry their daughter Trina to Rex. This would protect him legally in case they pressed any charges against him. After the family finally relented and signed off on the marriage, Trina was forced to come live with Rex at his house, and within 2 years she became pregnant. After the birth of her child, she took her baby and tried to run away from Rex, and she ran back to her family's new house, and she was hiding there, but Rex tracked her down. He took her and their baby back, and then Rex proceeded to burn her family's house down again, and again killed their new family dog. By the end of the 1970s, Rex wasn't only just the most hated person in Skidmore, he was the most destructive person. He had hurt so many people in town, but it seemed like no one could do anything about it. It was like he was untouchable. Then a single piece of candy changed everything. In 1980, one of Rex's children was at a local grocery store in Skidmore when they were caught stealing a piece of candy. When the shopkeeper asked the child to put the candy back, they refused, and it caused this huge fight, and before long, Rex has found out about this huge fight, and Rex, instead of being upset with his child for stealing, he becomes enraged that the shopkeeper had the audacity to accuse his child of a crime. And so Rex began stalking the owner of the store, a 70-year-old man named Bo, along with the rest of Bo's family. At all hours of the night, Rex would just show up in front of their house with a gun slung across his lap, and he would fire shots into the air, and then during the day, he would walk right up to Bo and he would tell him, "I'm going to kill you." And so Bo and his family knew it was only a matter of time before Rex did become violent, and they were right. In July of that year, Rex showed up at Bo's grocery store with a shotgun in hand, and Bo, who was in the back of the shop loading groceries through the back door, he turns around and he sees Rex walking up to him. They have this heated confrontation where at some point Rex just raises a shotgun and he fires a shot into Bo's neck. Bo was gravely wounded, but he would survive, and Rex would actually get arrested and would be charged with attempted murder. And it seemed like, for once, maybe Rex was actually going to get what was coming to him, but he didn't. The attempted murder charge was lowered to just assault, and he was given 2 years in prison. But he would only serve 1 day in jail before being released on bond. And as soon as he was out on bond, he went right to his house, and he got his rifle that had a bayonet attached at the end of it, and he went right to the tavern in the middle of Skidmore, and he began telling anybody who would listen that he planned to finish the job, i.e. he was going to kill Bo, and he described in very graphic detail how he planned to do it, which involved this rifle and this bayonet. Patrons that were at the tavern that saw Rex and heard these claims, they were scared for Bo, and so they left the tavern and they told city leaders about these threats. And so city leaders at this point, they've had enough of Rex, and they decide they're going to host this secret meeting that will not include Rex the following morning. So the next morning comes around, and all these angry residents, they come to this meeting, and they begin discussing, how are we going to handle Rex? We can't use police. We can't use politicians. Nothing can be done. So what are we going to do? How are we going to put an end to his reign of terror? And after a while, they came up with a plan. And after the meeting was done, everybody left the town hall, they got their guns, and they made their way over to the tavern where Rex was seen earlier that morning. About 40 of these armed men surrounded the outside of this tavern, and once they were all in place, another smaller group of men that were all armed walked inside the tavern, and they saw Rex sitting at the bar with Trina sitting right next to him. And so these men, they walk up right behind Rex, uncomfortably close, right behind him, and they just stand there with their guns looking at him. And at some point, Rex turns around and sees them, and he's about to lash out and start fighting them, but he realizes he's totally outnumbered, and these men that are standing all around him, they look like they mean business. And so he stands up, he grabs Trina, and he brushes past them, trying to act tough, and he walks out of the tavern. When he gets outside, he's taken aback at this additional group of armed men, which is much larger, who are all standing there just looking in at him. And so Rex at this point becomes visibly frightened, but he grabs Trina and he calmly walks out to his truck, which is parked a little ways out in front of the tavern. He gets in the driver's side, she she hops in the passenger side, and Rex lights a cigarette up, he turns on his truck, and he's about to try to drive away when a gunshot rings out, and Rex immediately slumps forward onto his wheel. One of the Skidmore residents runs up to the truck, they open up the passenger side, and they grab Trina, who was unhurt, pulled her out, and rushed her to safety. Once she was clear, the other residents with their guns just moved in on the truck, and for 20 seconds they opened fire on Rex. After the shooting was over, nobody called an ambulance. Everyone just stood there and watched as the town bully died. In all, there were 46 witnesses that were there when Rex was murdered, but they all said they had either not seen the shooting or they didn't know who the shooter was. And despite a lengthy federal investigation, none of the witnesses ever changed their stories. And so as a result, no one was ever charged with Rex's murder. Years later, a Skidmore resident, when asked what happened here, they just said that man needed a killing.
Vincent. Oh, God, so I'm just gonna get the call. Yeah.
For me, two things can be true in this video. One, that there is paranormal activity, energy, sounds, but also there are sounds that are coming from a technical glitch that are not paranormal. And that's what I feel is going on here. So I feel like a lot of that sound is not paranormal, but some of it is, and it's there getting lost in the overall more human physical sounds. So let's talk about what is paranormal. In this space, we've got honestly, these beings that move through this space, they look like they're not zombies, but that's the word that comes to me because they're just like not there's nothing in them. They're just, it's like completely drained of their essence. And it even is like, just to feel them is just, they're so weighted and so just empty. And it's interesting because I say like they're weighted and empty at the same time. The energy is heavy. And their soul and their essence is just empty. I want to see if, like, it's easy to just sort of get sucked into their suffering. So I want to try and disconnect myself from the suffering and assist them however I can. But in the meantime, there's a lot of children sounds, right? I'm seeing the sounds of children moving through the space, but out. It's like they come to visit someone and then they leave. So that energy, that sound is some of it is not paranormal, but that which is, it's like it's moving through the space and then out. I personally am not feeling, that doesn't mean they aren't there. I personally am not feeling children or children's spirits. I'm feeling adults that, like I said, look zombie-like. And they're just like circling and circling and circling. I gotta get them out of there. Hold on. I don't know what they were doing at this facility, but it was damaging. It was abusive. It was harmful. It was painful. There's a lot of beings to move on. So if you're watching, just start moving people over. And if you've never done that before, just, visualize them. They're all in these white gowns, like what you would think you would see. Like it very much looks like a movie scene. And just start to lift their chins so they see light. Visualize angels, their angels, beings, just lifting them. And they're just literally being pulled up to the light. It's like their essences were just stolen, taken. There was some sort of science that was science in quotes, that was used there, that was somehow able to, like, I just keep hearing, remove the essence, remove the essence. And it was painful and electrical. Like I feel electrical energy moving through me. Like electrical shocks moving through me. Just removing people of their existence. So let's move these beings on. Let's get them out. Let's get them out. There's one woman. She was a nurse or a doctor? Nurse. She was a nurse there. And she's watching me. She doesn't like what I'm doing. She never passed over. She's fearful because of the harm she caused. No regrets. No sympathy. Just, I'll need a lot of help. So just those that are watching, just keep moving these people along. Basically what I'm doing is putting up like a wall between us and this nurse who's trying to stop it. So this nurse comes in, like I'm seeing this nurse trying to stop what I'm doing. And she's the one that's keeping all these spirits in like this zombie-like line. And just controlling them. That's what she was doing in body. And she wanted to continue that. And so like when they all passed, they just like, it's like the soul like left the body and didn't proceed up. It just stopped because of the intense trauma. And also because it's like they were stealing their essence. And then she enjoyed that. And so she's keeping them there in the afterlife. And so I'm getting in front of her so we can move them out. Just keep moving them out. I'm just standing in front of her. Moving them out. So those of you watching, just keep moving. Just keep seeing these beings in like these white gowns and just lifting their heads up and watching them just float up. You don't need to interact with them. You don't need to know who they are because they're so damaged and they've been through so much. Let's not put them through more. Just with your energy and your light and your love, just move them up. And if you can sense that nurse, just put your hand out. She's mean, but she's not strong. Big difference, right? We got this. We just got to keep doing the work. And the more of you that watch this, the more of you that do the work, we'll get these guys out of there.
Was this an accidental fall down the stairs or something more sinister? Hello, true crimers. This is the case of Amanda Anton. Viewer discretion is advised. October 26, 2015, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. A man named Lee Antoni had come back home after visiting family in Saskatchewan. Comes home, he calls out for his wife, Amanda, but gets no response. He lets the dog outside, he searches the home, and And then finally, he gets to the basement. And that is when he finds an incredibly bloody scene, and his wife, Amanda, was dead. Blood filled most of the basement, the walls, the floor. Amanda Anton was born on June 5th, 1984. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, and she was described as a very high-spirited person. Incredibly enthusiastic, full of energy, full of life, loved to be silly and funny. She was very quick to make new friends. Amanda was simply someone you would never forget because she was so zany, so quirky and goofy. In 2009, she would marry the man she had been seeing for quite some time, Lee and Tony. By all accounts, they had a really good marriage. They were madly in love with one another. There were never any accusations or any times where there was any kind of domestic abuse in the household. They were just, your regular, normal married couple. They got into arguments from time to time like any married couple does. Amanda was pretty much the breadwinner of the family, though, because Lee apparently struggled to keep a job. But again, nothing was bad enough that people would go, oh my God, you need to get away from him. So in 2015, Lee, pictured here, and Amanda planned a trip to Saskatchewan to go visit Lee's mother. But at the last minute, within a day or so of the trip having to start, Amanda decided she couldn't go. This was one of the very first times since their marriage that they had ever really been separated by a couple of days. They were, for the most part, considered a very inseparable couple. But Amanda started to have really severe migraines and determined that she just couldn't go on this trip. So Lee went without her. And it is confirmed he was definitely in Saskatchewan when all of this occurred. Over that weekend, Lee and Amanda had communicated by text. They talked to each other on the phone. This is all confirmed. On a Saturday evening, Lee was talking to Amanda on the phone. This was around 7 p.m. or so. Amanda was telling Lee, oh, my migraines are finally letting up. I'm starting to feel better. Lee then says he hears their dog, Ruby, let out a loud bark. He then hears Amanda trying to calm Ruby down. Then all of a sudden, he hears a loud crunching type noise, and then suddenly the phone cuts out. He tries to call Amanda back right away, but there's no answer. It actually went straight to voicemail. He texts her several times, but gets no response. This wasn't totally out of the norm, though, because sometimes, Amanda would get really busy and caught up in something and just never pick up her phone. So he didn't really think much of it. But then he finally comes home and he finds Amanda dead. The coroner would determine that Amanda had blunt force trauma to her head and she bled out from that. And so that was her cause of death. It's a matter of finding out how it happened to determine if this was a murder or if this was simply an accident. Now, they know Lee was not there. They know he didn't physically kill her. And at the scene, police find this just horrifically bloody scene. The photos I'm going to show are primarily all in black and white because, one, to soften the blow, because there's just so much, and two, TikTok. As they're walking down the basement stairs, there is a little shelf, and on it is a little ceramic piggy bank that seems to be broken, but the rest of it had not fallen off the shelf. Then they go down and they just see blood just all over the floor. There are times where there's pools of blood, other areas where it appears that someone was walking through it or crawling through it. There's smears everywhere. All sorts of different patterns in the blood. It looks like someone was bleeding out and moving constantly. Something else that was interesting, they also found a couple locations where there were drops of blood. That typically happens when blood's coming from a slightly elevated area. So was this Amanda trying to get up and blood coming from wherever it was coming from to drop onto the ground? Or did these come from someone else? There was also blood on these little runners here, and then there was some blood on the walls. You can see where it kind of trickled down. It's just everywhere. This is by far one of the bloodiest scenes I have ever seen since doing this. Clearly, Amanda was struggling for her life. Did this happen because she was losing so much blood, she was confused, she didn't know what was happening? They don't know. The other interesting thing is they found a piece or a couple pieces of the ceramic pig on the basement floor amongst all of the blood. But how did the pig stay on the shelf if the front of it smashed? That didn't make sense. That piece was also caked in blood. Was this used as a way to smash over her head by someone else? They found bloody handprints on the walls, but those would end up being Amanda's. Her sweatshirt was completely saturated. When I tell you the amount of blood in this basement is a lot, I'm not over-exaggerating. Seeing the non-black and white images, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But at first glance, this looks like a murder scene because this type of blood doesn't happen by accident. And when you get down to it, Amanda didn't die instantly. Amanda was struggling for a long, long time. I mean, this might have been hours of time that she spent down there trying to get up. A lot of the blood looked like she had tried to stand up, but then slipped in the blood and fell back down. It is possible that maybe, due to her migraines, she might have had some, like, instant pain happen as she was walking down the basement stairs, and then she fell. She then cracked her head open on the floor somewhere, and then became disoriented. She had a concussion, a severe concussion. But this right here, it just says, how did this happen? There was also a chair upstairs in the dining room that was completely knocked over. It looked like maybe a struggle had taken place upstairs first. There was no forced entry into the home, however, but Lee cannot recall whether or not he unlocked the door when he entered the house or not. It's entirely possible the door was just unlocked and someone entered it. According to neighbors, there was a large population of unhoused people living in this area. And when talking to neighbors, they also can tell police that they heard something around the exact same time that Lee says there was a crunchy noise on the phone and then it went black. Well, neighbors said they heard someone screaming. They heard a very loud, like, banging sound coming from within the Antoni residence. They heard yelling. Another neighbor said they saw someone literally sprinting away from the backyard of the house. This could have been a transient who maybe was trying to break into the home. Amanda was there when it happened, and then a surprise attack. Maybe this person pushed Amanda down the stairs and then fled the scene. Unfortunately, they just don't know. The trauma to her head could be indicative very much of an accidental fall down the stairs, but also that could be indicative of being pushed down the stairs. It does sound like that is ultimately what led to her death, falling down the stairs in some capacity. Or maybe someone struck her over the head with the ceramic piggy bank and then she fell down the stairs, which is why that piece was all the way down there because maybe it got stuck in her head. But you would also think there might be more blood on the piggy bank, but there really wasn't. There didn't seem to be any blood surrounding it either. So it's, again, a mystery. Someone somewhere out there might have the answers as to what actually happened to Amanda Anton. Perhaps that someone is you. If you have any information on the suspicious death of Amanda Anton, please call 403-266-1234 or anonymously through 1-800-222-8477. They called her the Toxic Lady because of what happened to everyone around her. Hello, true crimerers. This is the unusual death of Gloria Ramirez. Viewer discretion is advised. It was February 19th, 1994 in Riverside, California. At 8:15 p.m. that night, a 31-year-old woman named Gloria Ramirez was rushed to the hospital. Gloria had been experiencing extreme nausea and she was vomiting all day long. And she seemed to have an irregular heartbeat as well. Now, a short time prior to this, Gloria had been diagnosed with late-stage cervical cancer. Some of the symptoms she was experiencing before her hospital visit were not really related to that. In the emergency room, she was experiencing severe shortness of breath, blood pressure was going up and down, heartbeat was very rapid, and she really couldn't talk or answer questions. So the hospital staff injects her with, medications in order to help subdue some of these symptoms. When they go to finally have to use a defibrillator on her, they notice that her skin is very oily. It was very shiny. And they began to notice a very strong, fruity, garlicky type odor coming from her. It was strong enough for everyone in the room to smell it. He then took a sample of her blood, and right away there was like a smell of ammonia coming from her blood. And one of the nurses looked at it and noticed that there was like these little tiny crystals forming on the blood, which is not supposed to happen. Something was off here. This is not an actual image of what happened next, but nurses, the doctor, everyone in that room within minutes began to feel very faint. They were getting dizzy. They were noticing their heart rates were going fast. One nurse just completely passed out. Another one left the room and had to sit down. A third nurse also passed out. That nurse, when she woke up, she felt like she was paralyzed almost. Like she couldn't move her legs. Eventually she was able to, but this is one of the nurses. One of the nurses would end up being admitted, I guess, into the ICU. Seemed to be affecting a whole bunch of people, not only the ones in the room directly, but now people just outside of the room. Feeling, dizzy, getting sick, feeling nauseous, throwing up, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeats. At approximately 8:50 p.m., sadly, Gloria Ramirez would be pronounced deceased. Hospital staff had to report what was going on. Again, not an image from the actual thing, but they had to bring in a special team wearing hazmat suits in order to handle Gloria's remains, because they don't know what was coming from her body that was causing all of this. They ended up actually evacuating a large portion of the emergency room and putting patients in other areas. Other members of the hospital staff who were near her were also hospitalized for short periods of time. There was suspicion from early on that maybe Gloria ingested pesticides in order to end her own life, and that's what ended up causing some sort of toxic fume, but that was very quickly ruled out. This is what they had to do just to autopsy her body the first time, wearing full hazmat suits. They had to be, hosed down, showered off after the autopsy. That's how serious they were taking this, because they didn't know what would happen. But it still remained a mystery after not one, not two, but 3 separate autopsies. She was initially put into an airtight metal casket so that the fumes couldn't, leak out. But eventually, after a little more than a month or so, Gloria's remains were finally released to her family when they deemed that she was no longer a toxic threat to anyone, and they were finally able to lay her to rest. The initial investigation into this ordeal, they would essentially say that the hospital staff was suffering from mass hysteria, and this was due to the stresses of working in a hospital. That seemed a little odd. The thing about that is that no one knew what was going on with Gloria. This wasn't like someone suffered some sort of illness and the rest of the team knew, oh, they're suffering an illness. Maybe this all happened so fast. This is all within 30 minutes. For 20 to 30 different people, that's the number of people, to suddenly join in on this mass hysteria thing. I know it's a psychological issue as well, but it seemed far-fetched. And again, some of these people were hospitalized for long periods of time. Some of them were in the ICU. All of them recovered. None of them died. So they send in, more people with hazmat suits, and they do a very thorough exam of the emergency room, the physical room she was in, and the emergency room as a whole, the hospital. They didn't find any signs of toxins or vapors or anything poisonous in the air. Nothing. Now, Gloria's cause of death would be linked to kidney failure, which came from her cervical cancer. But her family believed that if Gloria had not entered that hospital that night, she would have still been alive, basically insinuating that the hospital itself had poor conditions. But again, the investigation into it determined that there was nothing that would have caused this to happen to her or the hospital staff. How honest is that investigation? I couldn't say. Obviously, humongous lawsuits can come from it if they revealed there were toxins in the air. But then another medical expert would take one more look at this, and he determined something very different. He believes, and this is not able to be confirmed, but he believes that Gloria was using something called DMSO cream, also referred to as dimethyl sulfone. He believes that she may have put this all over her skin as some sort of cure-all to her cancer. It was one of those like snake oil type things that people believed would cure all sorts of illnesses if you rubbed this all over your body. It was deemed a toxic substance back in the 60s. I know you can actually use it again now. But back in the 90s, this was something that wasn't really supposed to be used much. But what happens when high levels of this substance is mixed in with, oxygen, it actually ends up converting to dimethyl sulfate, which is going to have a much, much stronger reaction than the typical sulfone. It will turn into a gas. It will make her skin very oily. It can lead to severe pain in your eyes. You may even lose your eyesight. It can strongly affect your lungs. It can cause things like convulsions and paralysis. The expert who determined this said that 19 of the 20 typical symptoms with this type of sulfate were experienced by the hospital staff. So the belief then became that the hospital staff was not experiencing mass hysteria. They had experienced dimethyl sulfate poisoning. But Gloria's family has denied she owned this. They have denied that she used it. And there is no actual physical proof that that was what was on her skin. This again was this expert's theory as to what happened. But it does fit the narrative, if you will. The things that you as a human will experience if you are in close contact to this type of gas is everything the hospital staff had. It could have led to what actually ended Gloria's life. This again was a common cure-all type thing, conspiracy theory type thing, but they just don't know if this was even on her at all. And in the end, Gloria Ramirez became known as the Toxic Lady, which I think is very unfair. Her name is Gloria Ramirez, and no matter how you look at it, she died far too young. And even if, in theory, this cream was all over her body, there was obviously no knowledge that this kind of thing would happen. There was no ill intent on her behalf. Because if she was using that cream, she was doing it to heal herself. She didn't want to die. She didn't want to die of cancer. But unfortunately, she ended up becoming a grim story. The sad reality is that whatever really happened inside that emergency room that night in 1994 will probably remain a mystery forever.
Mythical creatures that are in the Bible. Let's talk about it, because I see a whole lot of people, they be like, oh, I don't believe in mermaids. Oh, I don't believe in this and that. But it was in the Bible. Now let's talk about it. So the first thing on my list is the beautiful sirens that we know and love, that I talk about all the time on my page. Or some might call them mermaids, potato. They're sirens. And the sirens are mentioned in the book of Enoch. They were basically the women that the angels, the fallen angels, came down and mated with, and in return God turned them to the siren because they weren't supposed to be mating with these people, so that was their punishment. So next up, we're going to be talking about the giants, are also known as the Nephilim. So many different texts talk about the Nephilim. People be like, oh, I don't believe in giants, but they were literally in the Bible and talked about a lot. They were the offspring of the fallen angels. So y'all know the sirens in the group of angels that I talked about that made it. So these were the babies of the sirens and these angels. Those were known as the Nephilim. Next we're going to talk about unicorns. They were depicted in the Bible as well. Now, some passages mention unicorns. Some people say that they were just talking about rhinoceroses and stuff like that, or some type of two-horned rhinoceros. But the Hebrew word also translated to the word unicorn, which was a powerful two-horned wild ox or rhinoceros. But unicorns was in the Bible, so that makes sense to why unicorns is a thing. Like I said, where did Disney and where did all these kid-friendly books and movies come up with these type of creatures from? It had to originate from somewhere. Next up, we have dragons. Dragons was in different texts. Mainly in the book of Revelation, the dragon is a powerful symbolic figure often identified with Satan. Now, I said all this to say that all of these kid-friendly creatures like unicorns, dragons, and these cartoon movies, they originated from somewhere. And a lot of it originated from biblical text. So when y'all be like, oh, I don't believe in mermaids, I don't believe in dragons and all these type of mythical creatures, they're not mythical, boo.
Because if you're saying that, then that means everything else in the Bible that you believe is mythical. So how can you not believe in things that was in the Bible that you worship? Now, that's just a fruitful thought. Now let me know what y'all think in the comments.
If these headphones look familiar to you, you might have been involved with a program when you were in elementary school called the GATE program. That is Gifted and Talented Education, and this was really popular in the 80s and 90s. Now, when I was in school, I remember getting hearing tests, which is what a lot of other kids supposedly say they were told and they were taken to the GATE program. It involved a lot of matching items like these, like matching shapes, remembering things to see like how good your memory was. And a lot of people said that they also took a drink beforehand and it was pink and it kind of looked like Pepto-Bismol. Here's a sheet from a girl on TikTok who said this was from the GATE program, and she had to kind of decode and figure out what the message was saying. The theory behind the GATE program was that this wasn't to test your hearing or to put you in a special program or see what type of accelerated learning you would do good in, that it was more done by the government to test if you had some type of psychic ability. And a lot of people think this is where the idea for the show Stranger Things came from, the GATE program, which a lot of people remember happening, but also don't remember too much about the specific testing process. I don't remember being in the GATE program. I remember getting a hearing test. If that was what this was, I have no recollection other than a hearing test.
We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Scary Story, Trini Folklore for you today, and we have yet another story about Gumbo Gize, a version of Gumbo Gize, or as other people would know it, as an incubus. So this story would have taken place in Mayaru, and this person said it happened to their friend's mother. So the friend mother was dating an ex-policeman up on that side in Mayaru, and things were going well until she visited him at home. When she visited him at home, however, she noticed that he had a black book or a bad book. And when he noticed that she saw it, all hell broke loose. He totally changed. So she said that she started to experience sexual experiences, oral experiences, when she slept. And he threatened her and said that he will turn into a snake and he will bite her when she showers. He started to invoke a lot of evil from the book to attack her, and she had to go and seek spiritual help. When she seeks spiritual help, she was eventually saved from the situation, and then he died a few years later. That is certainly a very terrifying experience. Imagine you dating somebody, and when you notice that they have a bad book or a black book, they suddenly start attacking you explicitly. That's no laughing matter, but very terrifying. It seems as though the incubus or the Gumbo Gize is still out here and alive. So let me know, have you all ever had that experience with the Gumbo Gize or heard about it in your community?